Story 1. At Christmas dinner, my sister's children tore open my carefully wrapped gifts, then immediately threw them aside shouting, "These are cheap. We wanted iPads like last year." When I looked at my sister in shock, she just shrugged and said, "Kids these days." My grandmother patted my arm and added, "Don't be so stingy next time, you know they have expensive tastes." I said nothing, just quietly gathered my rejected presents and left. That was yesterday afternoon. Last night, my grandmother texted, "You've ruined Christmas with your dramatic exit." I simply replied, "Then I'll ruin next year too, I'm canceling my monthly payments for your assisted living facility." 56 missed calls followed within the hour. I should have seen it coming. Maybe I did, somewhere in the back of my mind where uncomfortable truths live until they force their way forward. But yesterday afternoon, sitting in my sister's living room surrounded by torn wrapping paper and entitled faces, I finally understood what my family thought of me. Let me back up. My name is David, and I'm 32 years old. I work as a software engineer for a mid-sized tech company in Portland. Nothing glamorous, but the pay is solid and I've always been careful with money. I live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment, drive a 7-year-old Honda Civic, and my biggest indulgence is probably my espresso machine. I'm not rich, but I'm comfortable. That distinction matters. My sister Rachel is 35. She married Connor, a real estate agent who talks a big game but whose sales have been spotty at best for the past 3 years. They have 2 kids, Aiden, who's 9, and Sophia, who's 7. They live in a 4-bedroom house in the suburbs that they can barely afford, drive matching leased SUVs, and generally project an image of success that doesn't quite match their bank statements. I know this because Rachel has asked me for money more than once, always with the promise that it's temporary, that things are about to turn around. Then there's my grandmother, Patricia. She's 78, sharp as ever, and has lived in the Meadowbrook assisted living facility for the past 2 years. It's not the cheapest place in town, but it's clean, well-staffed, and only 15 minutes from my apartment. The monthly cost is substantial, nearly $4,000 after insurance, and my grandmother's Social Security doesn't come close to covering it. My parents died 6 years ago in a car accident. Dad was driving home from a dinner party when a drunk driver crossed the center line. They were gone instantly, or so the police told us. I was 26, Rachel was 29. The estate wasn't much after everything was settled. They'd remortgaged the house a few years before to help Rachel with her wedding and first home down payment. What little remained was split between us. My grandmother, my dad's mother, was already widowed by then. After the funeral, after the paperwork and the phone calls and the unbearable quiet that followed, it became clear that someone needed to handle Grandma Patricia's living situation. She couldn't stay in her old house anymore. The stairs were too much, the maintenance too demanding. Rachel and Connor had just had Aiden and were drowning in new parent chaos. So I stepped up. I found Meadowbrook, toured it with Grandma Patricia, and when she said she liked the place, I figured out the finances. Her savings would last maybe 8 months. After that, someone would need to cover the gap. Rachel said she'd help when she could, but with the new baby and Connor's business investments, money was tight. I told them not to worry about it. I'd handle it. For the past 6 years, I've paid the difference every month. Sometimes it's $2,000, sometimes closer to $3,000, depending on what insurance covers. I've never missed a payment. I've never complained. Grandma Patricia is family, and family takes care of each other. At least, that's what I believed. The first Christmas after our parents died was brutal. None of us wanted to celebrate, but we forced ourselves through the motions for Aiden's sake. He was 3 then, too young to understand why everyone kept crying. I bought him a stuffed dinosaur. Rachel cried when she thanked me. By the second Christmas, Rachel and Connor had Sophia. Things felt a little lighter. We established a tradition: Christmas Eve at Rachel's house, presents in the morning, dinner in the afternoon, with Grandma Patricia joining us for the meal. I always brought gifts for everyone. Nice gifts. Thoughtful ones. Over the years, those gifts escalated. When Aiden turned 6, he wanted an iPad for his birthday in June. Rachel mentioned it casually at a family dinner, laughing about how kids these days have expensive taste. I bought it for him. His birthday, though, not Christmas. But come December, he wanted another one, the newer model. Sophia, not wanting to be left out, said she wanted one too. I should have said no. I can see that now. But Rachel gave me this look, half pleading, half expectant, and I thought about how our parents used to spoil us sometimes, how good it felt to be the one giving something special. So I bought them. Both kids got iPads that Christmas. The squeal of delight, the hugs, Rachel's grateful smile, it felt worth it. Grandma Patricia pulled me aside later that evening. "You're too generous, David," she said. "Those kids are going to expect this every year." "It's fine," I told her. "I can afford it." "That's not the point," she replied, but she didn't push further. She was right, of course. The next Christmas, Aiden asked if he was getting the new gaming console. Sophia wanted a hoverboard. Both items were expensive, together, they'd cost over $800. I bought them anyway. The pattern was set. This year felt different from the start. Work had been stressful. We'd laid off 10% of the company in October, and while my job was safe, my workload had doubled. I was putting in 60-hour weeks, barely sleeping, and my savings account had taken a hit when my car needed a new transmission in November. I was still comfortable, but not as comfortable as usual. I decided to scale back on Christmas gifts. Not dramatically, I'm not cruel, but reasonably. I spent time thinking about what Aiden and Sophia actually needed, what would be meaningful rather than just expensive. For Aiden, I found a beautiful hardcover collection of adventure novels. He'd mentioned liking Percy Jackson last summer, and this set included similar series he hadn't read yet. For Sophia, I bought an art supply kit, high-quality colored pencils, sketchbooks, watercolors. She'd been drawing constantly during my last visit, and I thought she'd appreciate tools that matched her growing interest. For Rachel and Connor, I bought a nice bottle of wine and a gift certificate to a restaurant they'd mentioned wanting to try. For Grandma Patricia, a soft cashmere shawl in her favorite shade of blue. Total spent, around $300. Not cheap by any means, but substantially less than previous years. I wrapped everything carefully, even included handwritten cards explaining why I'd chosen each gift. I was proud of myself for being more thoughtful than transactional. Yesterday morning, I drove to Rachel's house with my car full of presents. Snow had started falling overnight, coating everything in that perfect Christmas card white. I felt optimistic. Maybe this would be the year we focus less on material things and more on being together. Rachel greeted me at the door, already dressed in a red sweater that probably cost more than my entire outfit. "David. Finally. The kids have been asking about you all morning." I hauled in my bags of gifts and set them under the tree. Aiden and Sophia immediately swarmed me. "Uncle David. Did you bring our presents?" Aiden asked. "Of course I did," I said, ruffling his hair. "Are they big presents?" Sophia pressed. "You'll have to wait and see," I told her with a wink. Grandma Patricia was already settled in the recliner, a cup of tea in her hands. "Hello, David," she said warmly. "How was the drive?" "Not bad. Roads are getting slick, though." Connor emerged from the kitchen, beer in hand despite it being barely 10 in the morning. "Dave. Good to see you, man. Help me move some chairs for dinner?" We made small talk while setting up. Connor mentioned a big sale he was closing in January, how it was going to change everything. I'd heard versions of this story for 3 years. I just nodded. Present opening started around 11. Rachel had gone all out with decorations, the house looked like a magazine spread. Aiden and Sophia tore through their gifts from their parents first, a new video game system for Aiden, a deluxe doll set for Sophia, plus clothes and smaller items. The pile of discarded wrapping paper grew exponentially. Then they got to my gifts. Aiden grabbed the large box with his name on it. I'd wrapped it in silver paper with a green ribbon, really made it look special. He ripped it open with the enthusiasm that kids reserve for Christmas morning, and then stopped. "Books?" he said, his voice flat. "Not just books," I said quickly. "It's a whole adventure series." "I thought you might." "I wanted the new iPad," he interrupted. "Mom said Uncle David always gets us good stuff." My stomach clenched. Rachel laughed nervously. "Aiden, sweetie, Uncle David picked that out specially for you." Sophia had opened hers by now. She pulled out the art kit, looked at it for maybe 3 seconds, then pushed it aside. "These are cheap," she announced. "We wanted iPads like last year." The room went very quiet. I looked at Rachel, waiting for her to correct her daughter, to explain that the value of a gift isn't its price tag, to teach literally any lesson about gratitude. Instead, she shrugged. "Kids these days," she said, like that explained everything. Like that made it okay. Something cold settled in my chest. I turned to Grandma Patricia, hoping for support, for someone to acknowledge how inappropriate this was. She patted my arm with a sympathetic expression that somehow made everything worse. "Don't be so stingy next time," she said gently. "You know they have expensive tastes." Stingy. The word hit me like a physical blow. I paid $4,000 a month so she could live in comfort. I'd been doing it for 6 years without complaint. And she was calling me stingy over Christmas presents for my niece and nephew who just called my carefully chosen gifts cheap. I stood up. My legs felt shaky, but my mind was crystal clear. "I need to go," I said. "David, come on," Rachel started. "Don't be dramatic. Stay for dinner." "No, I don't think I will." I walked over to where Aiden had discarded the book set and Sophia had abandoned the art supplies. I picked them up, along with the wine and restaurant certificate that were still unopened under the tree. Grandma Patricia's shawl too. "What are you doing?" Rachel asked. "Taking back my cheap, stingy gifts," I said. My voice sounded calm, which surprised me. Inside, I was screaming. David, seriously, you're making this weird, Connor said. I didn't respond. I just gathered everything, walked to the door, and left. No big speech, no dramatic slamming. I simply walked out into the snowy afternoon and drove home. The rage didn't hit until I was back in my apartment. I paced for an hour, replaying the scene, getting angrier each time I remembered Sophia's dismissive tone or Grandma Patricia's casual accusation. My phone buzzed several times, texts from Rachel, but I ignored them. Around 8 last night, a text came through from Grandma Patricia. "You've ruined Christmas with your dramatic exit." I stared at that message for a long time. Ruined Christmas. Not "I'm sorry for what I said" or "Can we talk about what happened?" Just blame. I'd ruined Christmas by refusing to accept being treated like an ATM. I typed a response, deleted it, typed another. Finally, I settled on something simple and true. "Then I'll ruin next year too. I'm canceling my monthly payments for your assisted living facility." I hit send before I could second guess myself. Within minutes, my phone started ringing. "Rachel." I declined the call. It rang again. Declined. Text messages started flooding in. "David, call me now." "What are you talking about? You can't be serious. Call me." I turned off my phone and went to bed. I didn't sleep much, but I didn't regret the message either. The next morning, December 26th, I finally turned my phone back on. 56 missed calls. 23 voicemails. Countless text messages. I made coffee and started going through them. The first few voicemails were Rachel, increasingly frantic. Then Connor, trying to sound reasonable, suggesting I was overreacting and we should talk this through like adults. Several from Grandma Patricia, her tone shifting from indignant to concerned to almost apologetic. The texts covered similar ground. Rachel's messages evolved from angry to desperate over the course of the evening. The most recent one, sent at 2 a.m, said, "Please don't do this. We need to talk. Mom and Dad would want us to work this out." That last line made me see red all over again. Don't invoke our dead parents to manipulate me into continuing to fund your lifestyle while being treated like garbage. I needed to think clearly, so I did what I always do when I need clarity. I made a spreadsheet. Over the past 6 years, I'd paid approximately $162,000 toward Grandma Patricia's assisted living costs. That didn't include the Christmas and birthday gifts that had grown increasingly expensive, the emergency loans to Rachel that were never repaid, the times I'd covered dinner because Connor's commission check was delayed. Conservatively, I'd given my family over $180,000 since our parents died. I'm not the type of person who keeps score in relationships. I genuinely believed I was helping family, that this was what you did. But staring at those numbers, remembering Sophia's sneer and Grandma Patricia's accusation, something fundamental shifted in my perspective. I wasn't helping. I was enabling. And worse, I was being taken for granted. My phone rang again. "Rachel." I answered. "David, thank God," she said immediately. "Listen, about yesterday." "I'm listening," I said. "The kids were just excited and disappointed. You know how children are. And Grandma, she didn't mean anything by what she said. Everyone's really upset about your text. We need to figure this out." "Figure what out?" You can't actually cancel Grandma's payments. Where would she go?" "That's not my problem anymore," I said. The words felt foreign in my mouth, but true. "David, please. I know you're angry, but this is our grandmother. She's family. Family that called me stingy after I've paid nearly $200,000 to support everyone over the past 6 years." Silence on the other end. 200. Rachel trailed off. "That's an exaggeration. It's actually conservative. I have the spreadsheet in front of me. Would you like me to email it to you?" "You made a spreadsheet?" Her voice had gone cold. "What, you've been keeping track of every dollar? That's so typical of you, David. Always making everything about money." The audacity of that statement left me momentarily speechless. "I made everything about money?" I finally said. "Rachel, your kids literally threw my gifts aside and called them cheap. Your daughter said those exact words. And instead of correcting her, you shrugged and blamed kids these days. Grandma Patricia called me stingy. But I'm the one making everything about money? You're taking this out of context." "No," I interrupted. "I'm seeing the context clearly for the first time. I'm done." "Done with what?" "All of it. I'm canceling Grandma Patricia's payments. I'm done with the expensive Christmas gifts. I'm done being treated like a bank with no feelings." "You can't do this." Rachel's voice rose to a shout. "Grandma Patricia needs that facility. She can't afford anywhere else. Then you and Connor figure it out. You're her family too." "We can't afford it. David, you know we can't afford it." "I know you can't afford it while maintaining your current lifestyle," I said. "Maybe you'll need to make some choices. Sell one of the leased SUVs. Move to a smaller house. Stop buying $500 gaming systems for Christmas. Figure it out like adults have to do. This is because of the presents? Rachel's voice turned incredulous. You're going to let Grandma Patricia suffer because the kids were ungrateful about presents? No, I said. This is because I finally understand how my entire family views me. As a resource. Not a person, just a resource to be tapped whenever convenient. That's not true. It is true. And I'm done. Meadowbrook's billing office opens the day after Christmas. I'll call them tomorrow to stop my automatic payments. You have 30 days to make other arrangements. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but my resolve felt solid. I'd crossed a line, and I couldn't uncross it. More importantly, I didn't want to. The calls kept coming throughout the day. I let them all go to voicemail. Connor left a message calling me selfish and suggesting I needed therapy to deal with whatever issues were making me act this way. Rachel left a tearful voicemail begging me to reconsider. Grandma Patricia's message was the most manipulative. She talked about how proud my father would have been of me taking care of family, how disappointed he'd be to see me abandoning that responsibility now. I almost broke at that one. Almost. But then I remembered her pat on my arm, the casual way she'd called me stingy, and the steel returned. Around 6 p.m, an unknown number called. I answered, curious. David? This is Margaret Chen, the administrator at Meadowbrook. I hope you're having a nice holiday. My stomach dropped. Hi, Margaret. I apologize for calling on Christmas, but your grandmother asked me to reach out. She's quite upset, and I wanted to check in personally. She mentioned something about a family disagreement? Margaret was professional, kind, and completely unaware she was being used as leverage. I felt bad putting her in this position. There's been a situation, I said carefully. I'm planning to call your billing office tomorrow to discuss changes to my payment arrangement. I see. A pause. David, I don't mean to pry, but I want you to know that Patricia is thriving here. She's made friends, participates in activities, and her health has been stable. I'd hate to see her have to leave. I understand, I said. But my financial situation has changed, and I can no longer cover her costs. It wasn't a lie, exactly. My financial situation had changed. I decided to stop bleeding money to people who didn't appreciate it. Well, if there's anything we can do to help, payment plans or other options, please let us know. Patricia is important to us. We ended the call politely, but I felt the weight of it. I wasn't just affecting my relationship with Rachel and Grandma Patricia. I was potentially displacing an elderly woman from her home. The guilt tried to creep in. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. I hope you're proud of yourself. Making an old woman worry on Christmas. The guilt evaporated. They still didn't get it. They were still making me the villain for refusing to be taken advantage of. I spent the rest of Christmas evening alone. Ordered Chinese takeout, watched a movie, tried to feel normal. Mostly, I just felt tired. The day after Christmas, I called Meadowbrook's billing office as promised. I explained that I needed to terminate my automatic payment arrangement effective at the end of the current billing cycle. The woman I spoke with was sympathetic but businesslike. She informed me that they'd need to meet with Patricia to discuss her options if the payments weren't continued. Will she have to leave? I asked. Not immediately. We work with families to find solutions. Sometimes relatives can share the cost, or we can explore Medicaid options, or in some cases, residents move to more affordable facilities. More affordable facilities. I knew what that meant. Places that were fine, probably, but not as nice as Meadowbrook. Smaller rooms, fewer activities, less attentive staff. I thanked her for the information and hung up. Within an hour, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a man's voice said, David? This is Thomas Reeves. I'm an attorney. Your sister Rachel has asked me to reach out regarding a family matter. An attorney. Rachel had called an attorney. I'm listening, I said. There seems to be some dispute about financial arrangements for your grandmother's care. Rachel believes there may have been a verbal agreement when your parents passed that you would maintain these payments. She's hoping we can resolve this amicably without legal action. I almost laughed. There was no agreement. I volunteered to help. I'm now choosing to stop. There's nothing legally binding about it. Be that as it may, abruptly ceasing support for an elderly relative could potentially be construed as elder abandonment in some circumstances. I'm not abandoning anyone, I interrupted. I'm giving them 30 days notice that I'm discontinuing voluntary financial support. Grandma Patricia has a granddaughter, a grandson-in-law, and great-grandchildren who can figure out her care. I'm not her only living relative. Rachel has indicated she's not in a financial position too. Then Rachel needs to make different choices. Mr. Reeves, with all due respect, I'm not interested in being threatened or manipulated. I've paid voluntarily for 6 years. I'm stopping. If Rachel wants to spend money on lawyers instead of using that money toward Grandma Patricia's care, that's her decision. I hung up. My heart was pounding. An attorney. They'd actually gotten an attorney involved. My phone immediately rang again. Rachel. I declined it. She called 3 more times. Then texts started flooding in. You hung up on my lawyer? How dare you? This is so typical of you. You've always been selfish. Mom and Dad gave you everything and this is how you repay them. That last text made something snap. I called her back. She answered on the first ring. David, don't ever say that to me again, I said, my voice low and shaking with anger. Mom and Dad gave me everything? They remortgaged their house to pay for your wedding and down payment. The estate was nearly empty when they died because of choices they made for you. I've never said anything about that. I've never made you feel guilty about it. But don't you dare suggest I owe you or anyone else because of what our parents did. That's not what I meant. Yes, it is. It's exactly what you meant. And while we're being honest, let's talk about the loans you've asked for over the years. The $2,000 for Aiden's medical bills that insurance wouldn't cover. The $1,500 when Connor's car broke down. The $3,000 for emergency home repairs that turned into a remodeled kitchen. None of that has been repaid. Not $1. We were going to pay you back. When? It's been years for some of those loans. Years, Rachel. I never pressed you because you're my sister and I thought family helped each other. But family also respects each other. Family doesn't raise children who call gifts cheap. Family doesn't call someone stingy when they've given nearly $200,000. Silence. You really made a spreadsheet, she finally said, her voice small. Yes. I didn't realize it was that much. Because you never asked. You never wondered if it was a burden. You just assumed I was fine with it because I never complained. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't. We didn't mean to make you feel used. But that's how I feel. And yesterday, instead of teaching your kids about gratitude or respect, you shrugged and let them treat me like garbage. Grandma Patricia called me stingy. And you both still think I'm the problem for being upset about it. What do you want from us? Rachel asked. Nothing, I said. That's the point. I don't want anything from you. I want to stop giving everything to you. So you're just done? With all of us? I'm done being treated this way. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be different. I'm not a bank. I'm not an obligation. I'm a person who deserves basic respect. And Grandma Patricia? Figure it out. You're creative when you need to be. I hung up again. This time, she didn't call back. The next 2 days were relatively quiet. A few text messages here and there, but the onslaught had stopped. I assumed they were regrouping, trying to figure out their next move. I spent the time thinking about boundaries. I'd never been good at them. Growing up, I was the easy kid. Rachel was dramatic, demanding, always needing something. I learned early that the way to keep peace was to not ask for much, to be helpful, to make myself useful. That pattern had followed me into adulthood. I'd become so accustomed to being the giver that I'd forgotten I was allowed to say no. Yesterday's explosion, because that's what it was, really, an explosion of years of suppressed resentment, had blown apart the dynamic. Now I needed to figure out what came next. On December 28th, I got a text from an unknown number. This is Margaret Chen from Meadowbrook. Would you have time to meet with me and Patricia? I think we should talk in person. I agreed to meet the following day. Meadowbrook was decorated for the holidays, with garlands and twinkling lights softening its institutional feel. Margaret met me in the lobby, professional as always in a navy blazer and gray slacks. David, thank you for coming, she said, shaking my hand. Patricia is waiting in the family conference room. My grandmother looked smaller than I remembered, seated at the large table. Her hands were folded in front of her, and she didn't meet my eyes when I entered. I'll give you two some privacy, Margaret said, closing the door behind her. I sat across from Grandma Patricia. The silence stretched. I'm sorry, she finally said. I waited. I was thoughtless. What I said about you being stingy, it was cruel and untrue. You've been more than generous. You've been what's kept me here, in this place, with my friends and my dignity. I know that. Then why did you say it? I asked. She looked up, and I saw tears in her eyes. Because I'm a foolish old woman who forgot to be grateful. I got used to being comfortable, and I forgot what it cost you. Your sister. Rachel always had a way of making everything seem like it should just work out. Like money appeared when needed. I suppose I fell into that same thinking. But what I said was wrong. Unforgivably wrong. It wasn't just what you said, I told her. It was everything. The kid's behavior, Rachel's response, your comment, it all added up to show me how everyone sees me. As someone whose job is to provide. That's not who you are to me, she insisted. Isn't it, though? When's the last time you called just to ask how I was doing? Not to coordinate a visit or discuss bills, but just to talk? She opened her mouth, then closed it. I don't know. Me neither. Because our relationship has become transactional. I pay, you live here, we see each other at holidays. That's not what I want. What do you want? She asked. I want a matter as more than a bank account. I want family that acts like family, not clients who act like family. Grandma Patricia nodded slowly. I understand. And I don't blame you for being angry. For what you're doing. I'm not trying to punish you, I said. I'm trying to save myself. These past 6 years, I've poured everything into making sure everyone else was okay. But nobody's checked if I was okay. Nobody's asked what I needed or wanted. And when I finally did something for myself, choosing thoughtful gifts instead of expensive ones, I got called cheap and stingy for it. The gifts were lovely, she said quietly. The shawl you chose for me, it was perfect. I didn't even get to thank you properly. I left it in my car. Took it back with everything else. I wish you hadn't. I wish I'd been wise enough to speak up when those children were being awful. I wish I'd been grateful instead of entitled. She paused. Margaret told me you're stopping the payments. I am. She says there are options. Medicaid, if I qualify. Or a less expensive facility. Or, she swallowed hard. Or your sister could take me in. Rachel offered that? She mentioned it as a possibility. Connor isn't happy about it, but she said they'd make it work if they had to. I tried to imagine my grandmother living in Rachel's chaotic household, sharing space with 2 ungrateful children and a resentful son-in-law. It sounded miserable for everyone involved. There might be another option, I heard myself say. Grandma Patricia looked up hopefully. I could continue the payments, I said slowly, working through the idea as I spoke. But things would need to change. Real changes, not promises. Anything, she said immediately. I need you to hear me out before you agree. She nodded. First, no more comments about money, gifts, or how I choose to spend or not spend. Not from you, not from Rachel, not from anyone. What I give is my choice, and it's not up for judgment or commentary. Agreed. Second, we rebuild an actual relationship. You call me once a week, not to discuss bills or logistics, but just to talk. I'll do the same. We have conversations like people who care about each other, not like a client and service provider. I'd like that very much, she said softly. Third, and this is non-negotiable, you never, ever let anyone in this family treat me the way Rachel's kids did at Christmas. If you see it happening, you speak up. You defend me. You act like I matter. You do matter, David. Then prove it, I said, not unkindly. Because right now, I have 6 years of evidence that I matter only as long as I'm useful. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her skin was papery and cool. I'll prove it. However long it takes, I'll prove it. We sat there for a moment, hands clasped across the table. What about Rachel? She asked. And the children? That's more complicated, I admitted. Rachel and I need to have some serious conversations. The kids. They're young, and they've been raised in an environment where money is how love is shown. That's partly my fault. I enabled it. So what happens now? Now I maintain my boundaries. I'll continue paying for your care here, but the other stuff, the loans, the expensive gifts, the emergency funds, that stops. Rachel needs to learn to manage her own finances. And if she wants a relationship with me, it needs to be based on more than what I can do for her. She does love you, you know, Grandma Patricia said. She's just lost her way a bit. Maybe, I said. But love without respect isn't enough. We talked for another hour, about lighter things and harder truths. By the time I left, something had shifted. Not fixed, this wasn't the kind of damage that one conversation could repair, but shifted. We had a foundation to build from. Margaret walked me out. Thank you for meeting with her, she said at the door. Patricia's been distraught since Christmas. I needed to hear that she understood, I said. That she knew why I was upset. For what it's worth, I think she does now. And David? What you've done for your grandmother these past years, it's remarkable. I've seen a lot of families struggle with these decisions. Not many people would have stepped up the way you did. I just wish I'd set better boundaries from the start. It's not too late to start now, she said with a kind smile. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in days. I still had to deal with Rachel, that conversation was inevitable, but I'd taken the first step toward reclaiming my life. Rachel called that evening. Grandma told me you met with her, she said without preamble. I did. She said you're continuing the payments. Under conditions. Did she tell you those? She mentioned some things. Rachel's voice was careful. David, I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About the loans and the money and everything. And? You're right. About most of it. Connor and I have been living beyond our means for years. We kept thinking things would get better, that the next sale or the next opportunity would fix everything. But we were counting on you as our safety net. That's not sustainable, I said. I know. Connor and I had a long talk. We're putting the house on the market. I nearly dropped the phone. You're what? The mortgage is too high. We're drowning in it. We found a smaller place, a rental, about half the cost. It's not in the fancy neighborhood, but it's nice enough. And we're selling one of the SUVs. Connor can use the other for work. Rachel. That's huge. It's necessary. We should have done it years ago instead of asking you for money every time something came up. She paused. I'm sorry. For all of it. For taking advantage of your kindness. For not teaching the kids better. For not appreciating what you've sacrificed. Thank you for saying that. I mean it. And I want to make things right. I can't pay back everything at once, but I worked out a plan. $200 a month until the loans are repaid. It'll take years, but I'll do it. You don't have to. Yes, I do. It's the right thing to do. And David? About Christmas. Connor and I talked to Aiden and Sophia. Really talked to them about how they behaved and why it was wrong. They're writing you apology letters. I'm supervising to make sure they're genuine, not just what they think they should say. I appreciate that. The iPads are gone, by the way. Sold them. The kids aren't happy about it, but they need to learn that actions have consequences. And that people are more important than things. We talked for another half hour, really talked. Rachel admitted things I'd never heard her say before, how jealous she'd been that I seemed to have my life together, how guilty she felt every time she asked me for money, how she'd convinced herself it was okay because David can afford it. I wanted to give my kids everything, she said. But I forgot to give them the most important things. Values. Gratitude. Empathy. I got so focused on the material stuff that I lost sight of what actually matters. It's not too late to change that, I said. I hope not. I really hope not. We agreed to have dinner in a few weeks, after things had settled. Just the two of us, no kids, no obligations. A chance to rebuild our relationship as siblings, not as creditor and debtor. New Year's Eve came and went quietly. I spent it alone, which would have depressed me in past years. This time, it felt peaceful. I made a list of goals for the year ahead, not resolutions, but intentions. Better boundaries. More self-advocacy. Finding relationships that were reciprocal rather than one-sided. On January 2nd, I got a package in the mail. 2 letters, carefully handwritten. Aiden's letter was short but seemed sincere. Dear Uncle David, I'm sorry for saying your gift was cheap. Mom explained that you picked out books because you thought I would like them. I started reading the first one and it's actually really good. I was being a brat. I'm sorry. Love, Aiden. Sophia's was longer, with several crossed out words and some spelling errors. Dear Uncle David, I'm sorry I threw away the art stuff. Mom made me go get it from the trash and I cleaned it off. I've been using the colored pencils every day and they're really nice. Better than my old ones. I drew you a picture, it's in the envelope. I'm sorry for being mean. You're a good uncle and I love you. From Sophia. Inside was a drawing of what I assumed was our family, stick figures holding hands. One figure was labeled Uncle David in careful block letters. I put the letters on my refrigerator. 3 weeks later, I met Rachel for dinner at a casual Italian place. She looked different, tired, maybe, but also lighter. Less of the forced brightness she usually carried. The house went under contract, she announced after we ordered. We should close in March. How do you feel about it? Relieved, honestly. Scared, but relieved. It's like we've been pretending for so long that I forgot what it felt like to just be honest about where we are. I understand that feeling, I said. Do you? You've always seemed to have everything figured out. I laughed, surprising myself. Rachel, I've been in therapy since April. Did you know that? No. Why? Because I realized I had no idea how to advocate for myself. I'd spent so long being the person everyone relied on that I didn't know how to say no. How to prioritize my own needs. I thought being generous made me a good person, but really, I was just avoiding conflict. Is that why you exploded at Christmas? Partly. But also because I finally hit a limit. There's only so long you can pour from an empty cup before you run dry. She nodded thoughtfully. Connor started therapy too. For financial stress and, well, for how he's handled things. Turns out there were some things from his childhood about money and status that he never dealt with. He's trying to do better. That's good. We're trying to be better parents. Setting limits with the kids, teaching them about money and value. It's hard. They're used to getting whatever they want. But Aiden's actually been reading those books you got him. He asks me about mythology constantly now. I smiled. That was the point of the gift. I know. And it was a good gift. I'm sorry I didn't say that at the time. The food came, and we ate and talked about normal things. TV shows, work gossip, memories from our childhood. It felt like being siblings again, not like being in a transaction. As we were leaving, Rachel hugged me. Thank you, she said. For what? For not giving up on us. For being willing to try again. A lot of people wouldn't have. You're my sister, I said simply. I know. But that doesn't obligate you to accept bad treatment. The fact that you're here, after everything, means a lot. I drove home thinking about family and what it means. It's not obligation. It's not transactions. It's choosing, over and over, to show up for people who also choose to show up for you. It's boundaries and respect and genuine care. My grandmother and I talk every Thursday now. She tells me about her friends at Meadowbrook, the activities she's doing, books she's reading. I tell her about work, about a woman I've started seeing, nothing serious yet, but promising, about my life. We're building something real. Rachel sends me payment every month, exactly $200, with a note attached. Sometimes it's just a quick thinking of you, other times it's longer updates about the kids or house hunting progress. We have dinner once a month, sometimes just us, occasionally with Connor and the kids. Aiden and Sophia are slowly learning. They're not perfect, kids never are, but they're trying. I kept the art supplies and books. In February, I gave them to Aiden and Sophia again, this time without fanfare or expectation. They thanked me properly. Sophia showed me her sketchbook, filled with drawings. Aiden talked enthusiastically about the third book in the series. It's not perfect. Some days, I still feel resentful about the years of being taken for granted. Some days, Rachel slips into old patterns of expecting me to solve problems. Some days, I worry I'm being too harsh or not harsh enough. But it's different now. We're different now. Or maybe we're finally being honest about who we've always been. I learned something important from Christmas Day and its aftermath. Love isn't shown through money. It's shown through respect, through boundaries, through showing up even when it's hard. Through choosing each other, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. The 56 missed calls were a turning point, but not because of the panic they represented. They were a turning point because they forced everyone, including me, to reckon with what our relationships had become and decide what we wanted them to be. I chose to walk back from the edge, not because I had to, but because I wanted to, on my terms. That's made all the difference. The rejected Christmas presents are still in my closet. I haven't decided what to do with them. Maybe I'll donate them. Maybe I'll keep them as a reminder. Every year has its defining moment, the event that splits time into before and after. For me, this year, it was a Christmas afternoon when I finally said enough. When I gathered up my carefully chosen gifts and walked out of a house where I wasn't valued. The best gift I gave myself wasn't wrapped in silver paper with a green ribbon. It was the gift of knowing my worth, of demanding respect, of refusing to be anyone's ATM or safety net or convenient resource. It was the gift of boundaries. And it's the gift I keep giving myself, every day, as I build a life where I matter for who I am, not what I provide. That's worth more than any iPad. Story 2. During my business trip, my sister called an emergency family meeting, convincing our elderly parents I was gambling away their inheritance and financially unfit to handle their affairs. When I returned, she met me at the door with a smirk. We've unanimously decided I'm moving in to manage things properly. Your key won't work anymore. I just nodded calmly and said, that's your choice, though you might want to check whose name is on one critical document. That was last month. Yesterday, I contacted the bank to suspend the $2,300 monthly payments I'd been making on our parents' reverse mortgage, the one I'd co-signed 5 years ago when everyone else had financial emergencies. The frantic voicemail started exactly 29 days later when the default notice arrived, my sister's voice cracking. There's been a huge misunderstanding. Please call back immediately. I stood in the hotel parking lot with my phone pressed against my ear, listening to my father's voice shake in a way I'd never heard before. He was 73. He didn't shake. Your sister says you've been making risky investments, he said. Each word came out careful, rehearsed. She showed us bank statements. Large withdrawals. She's worried about us, son. About what happens if something goes wrong. The Houston heat made my shirt stick to my back. I'd been in meetings for 3 days straight, closing a contract that would keep my consulting firm stable for another year. My phone had been on silent. 16 missed calls. Dad, what bank statements? From your account. The one you. She said you've been hiding things. My stomach dropped. Not from fear. From recognition. I knew exactly which statements he meant, because I'd never shown them to my bank statements to anyone. Certainly not to my sister Rebecca. I'll be home tomorrow, I said. Don't do anything until we talk. Son, she's already here. She's helping your mother with her medications. You know how confused Mom gets lately. The line went quiet except for his breathing. Rebecca moved in? I asked. Just temporarily. Until we sort this out. She's taking a leave from her job to help us. She's being very generous. I ended the call and stood there while the sun beat down on the asphalt. A family of 4 walked past me toward the hotel entrance, the kids arguing about where to eat dinner. Normal problems. Normal lives. I got in my rental car and drove. 5 years ago, my parents called me on a Tuesday night. My mother's voice was bright, too bright, the way she sounded when she was trying not to cry. "We're fine," she said. "Really? We just need to talk about some options." Dad got on the line. "The property taxes went up again. And your mother's medications, the insurance doesn't cover everything anymore. We're managing, but it's tight." They'd paid off their house in 1998. 30 years of mortgage payments, finally free. They'd thrown a party. My mother had framed the last payment receipt. "How much do you need?" I asked. "We're not asking for money," Dad said quickly. "We're looking into a reverse mortgage. The bank says we qualify." I'd researched reverse mortgages for a client once. I knew how they worked. How they could help, or how they could trap you. "Let me look at your finances first," I said. "Before you sign anything." It took 2 weeks to untangle. They'd been living on Social Security and Dad's small pension, stretching every dollar. Mom's rheumatoid arthritis medication cost $600 monthly even with insurance. They'd been skipping meals to afford it. Rebecca lived 2 hours away in a suburb with good schools and a homeowners association that fined you if your grass grew too tall. She called them every Sunday, like clockwork. She sent flowers on birthdays. She had 3 kids, Tyler, Madison, and Emma, and a husband named Brad who worked in pharmaceutical sales. She drove a Lexus SUV with heated seats and a premium sound system. Our brother Marcus lived in Colorado. He was a ski instructor at some resort I could never remember the name of. He sent postcards with mountains on them and messages written in his slanted handwriting about powder days and the simple life. He was 41 and lived with 2 roommates. I was the middle child. The boring one. 38, unmarried, no kids. I ran a small business consulting firm out of an office suite I shared with an accountant and a graphic designer. I helped struggling companies optimize their operations, cut costs, streamline processes. I lived alone in a 1-bedroom apartment with beige walls and furniture from 3 different stores because I'd never bothered to coordinate anything. My life was spreadsheets and efficiency reports and client meetings. I was good at solving problems. I was less good at everything else. "Don't do the reverse mortgage yet," I told them. "Let me help." "You already do enough," Mom said. "You fixed the furnace last year. You paid for the roof repairs." "This is different," Dad added. "This is ongoing. We can't keep taking from you." But they weren't taking. They'd given me everything. Dad had worked double shifts at the manufacturing plant so I could go to college. Mom had sewn my clothes until I was 12 because new ones weren't in the budget. They'd never asked for anything back. They'd never expected anything back. "What if we do this together?" I said. "We do the reverse mortgage, but I co-sign. That way I can help make the monthly payments, and you have a cushion. Extra security." "The bank said there aren't monthly payments," Dad said, confused. "There can be. It's an option. They advance you a lump sum, or monthly payments, or a line of credit. If we structure it right, you get monthly income, and I help cover the interest and fees. The house stays yours. When you eventually sell or move, we settle the balance. But for now, you're comfortable." The silence on the line stretched. "That's too much," Mom whispered. "It's not. I can afford it. My business is doing well. And this way, you don't have to worry." What I didn't tell them was that I'd already run the numbers. $2,300 monthly was manageable for me. It would cut into my savings plan, delay some investments, push back the timeline on buying my own place, but it was manageable. And they'd be okay. They'd be able to eat properly, keep the heat on in winter, buy Mom's medication without counting pills and rationing doses. We set it up in March. The bank approved me as co-senior without much fuss. I had good credit, a steady income, no major debts. I set up automatic payments from my business account so I wouldn't have to think about it every month. Mom cried when the first deposit hit their checking account. Dad stood in the kitchen and stared at the bank statement like he couldn't believe it was real. Rebecca called me a week later. Her voice had that edge it always got when she was trying to sound casual but wasn't. "I heard what you did," she said. "That's really generous. They needed help. I would have helped. You should have told me. You have 3 kids. I'm single." It made sense. Still. The edge sharpened. I would have liked to have been part of the decision. They're my parents too. "It's handled now." "Right. Of course. You always handle everything, don't you? St. Michael, swooping in to save the day. Must be nice to have that kind of disposable income." "Rebecca, no, I get it. You're the successful one. The one without responsibilities. The one who can just throw money at problems." I didn't call it throwing money. I have 3 kids in private school. Brad's company cut his commission structure. We have expenses you can't even imagine. But sure, I'm the bad daughter because I can't write a check whenever Mom and Dad need something. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. She hung up first. I stood there with the phone in my hand, thinking about how family was supposed to make you feel warm and connected, and how sometimes it just made you feel tired. Over the next 5 years, I visited my parents every weekend. Saturday mornings, I'd stop at the grocery store and pick up the things I knew they needed: the brand of coffee Dad liked, the yogurt Mom could actually open without her hands cramping, fresh vegetables they wouldn't buy themselves because they were too expensive. I'd show up around 10, let myself in with the spare key they'd given me, and unpack everything while they protested half-heartedly. I helped Dad maintain the yard because his knees weren't what they used to be. I drove Mom to doctor's appointments when her hands were too swollen to grip the steering wheel. I sat in waiting rooms with fluorescent lights and outdated magazines and held her purse while she got x-rays and blood work and prescriptions that never seemed to help as much as they should. Rebecca visited once every few months, usually around holidays. She brought Tyler, Madison, and Emma, who were good kids but loud in the way suburban children are, used to space and attention and having their needs met immediately. They'd run through the house, and Mom would smile and say how wonderful it was to see them, and then she'd sleep for 3 hours after they left because the noise exhausted her. Rebecca took photos. Lots of photos. She posted them online with captions about family and gratitude and the importance of honoring your parents and remembering where you came from. She got hundreds of likes. People commented about what a good daughter she was. Marcus sent postcards from Aspen, Vail, Lake Tahoe, places where the snow was perfect and the sky was blue and responsibilities were something other people had. I didn't mind. I genuinely didn't. My parents were aging, and aging wasn't pretty or Instagram worthy. Dad's hearing got worse. He started asking people to repeat themselves, then pretending he'd heard when they did. Mom's arthritis spread from her hands to her knees, then her spine. She moved slower. Some mornings she couldn't get out of bed without help. She started forgetting things. Small things at first, where she put her reading glasses, what day it was, whether she'd taken her medication. Then bigger things. She called me David once, which was my father's name. She looked confused when I corrected her, like she couldn't understand why I was lying to her. "I'm getting old," she said, trying to laugh it off. Dad's expression told me he was terrified. I started keeping records. Not because I expected trouble, but because things were getting complicated. Medical expenses. Home repairs. Insurance claims. Forms that needed to be filled out and filed and followed up on. I kept spreadsheets because that's what I knew how to do. I backed everything up to the cloud because losing data was unacceptable. The payments continued. Every month, like clockwork. $2,300. I watched the money leave my account and felt nothing except satisfaction that they were taken care of. That they could turn the heat up when they were cold. That Mom could take all her medications instead of choosing which ones to skip. I never mentioned it to my parents. It would have made them feel guilty, and what was the point? They'd given me life. They'd sacrificed everything so I could have opportunities they never had. I was giving them comfort in their final years. It felt like a fair trade. More than fair. The business trip to Houston was supposed to be routine. 3 days, standard contract negotiation with a manufacturing company that wanted to reduce overhead without laying off workers. It was the kind of problem I was good at solving. I left on a Monday morning. My parents were fine. Dad was planning to plant tomatoes in the side garden. Mom was reading a mystery novel, the large print kind from the library. I called them Monday night from the hotel room. Everything was normal. Dad told me about the tomato seedlings he'd bought. Mom told me about the book, though she couldn't quite remember the detective's name. Tuesday, I was in meetings all day. Phone on silent because the CEO was the type who took offense at interruptions. We broke for lunch, then went straight back into negotiations. By the time I checked my phone at 6, I had 16 missed calls. 3 from Dad. 8 from Rebecca. 5 from numbers I didn't recognize. I called Dad first, already feeling the weight in my chest, the sense that something had shifted while I wasn't paying attention. That's when I heard his voice shake. The drive from Houston to home took 6 hours. I could have waited until morning, caught a flight, been there by noon. But I needed to drive. Needed my hands on the wheel and my eyes on the road and my mind occupied with something other than the conversation replaying in my head. I stopped once for gas at a station off Interstate 10. The fluorescent lights hummed. A teenager was mopping the floor near the soda fountain, pushing dirty water in circles. I bought coffee I didn't drink and stood in the parking lot watching trucks roll past on the highway. Bank statements. How did Rebecca get my bank statements? I ran through the possibilities. Hacking seemed too technical for Rebecca, who still called me when she couldn't figure out how to update her phone. Identity theft would require information she didn't have. Unless, last Christmas, I'd been at my parents' house, helping Mom wrap presents because her hands couldn't manage the tape anymore. I'd needed to log into my bank to transfer money, pay a vendor invoice that was due. I'd used Dad's computer, the old desktop in the room that used to be my bedroom. Mom had burned the rolls. The smoke alarm had started screaming. I jumped up to help, waving a dish towel under the detector while Mom apologized and Dad opened windows. Had I logged out of the bank website? I always logged out. Security protocol. Basic digital hygiene. But I'd been distracted. The alarm had been loud. Mom had been upset. Rebecca visited them in January. I remembered because she'd called to tell me she was coming, her voice bright with performance. I'm taking a long weekend to spend time with Mom and Dad. Quality time. You know how important that is. She'd stayed 3 days. 3 days alone in the house while Mom napped, while Dad ran errands, while no one was watching. Plenty of time to check browser history. Find saved passwords. Screenshot bank statements. Plenty of time to build a case. I got back in the car and drove. I pulled into my parents' driveway at 4 in the afternoon. The house looked the same, white siding that needed repainting, black shutters, the maple tree in the front yard that had been there since before I was born. But Rebecca's Lexus sat in the spot where I usually parked, shiny and aggressive and wrong. The front curtains moved. Someone watching. I grabbed my overnight bag from the trunk. I'd showered at the hotel that morning, put on clean clothes, dark jeans and a button-down shirt. I wanted to look calm. Professional. In control. The door opened before I could knock. Rebecca stood there in slacks and a blazer, dressed like she was going to a parent-teacher conference or a business meeting. She'd cut her hair since I last saw her, shorter and styled in a way that probably required product and time. She looked put together. She looked like someone who managed things. "We need to talk," she said. Not hello. Not how was your drive. Just that. Where are Mom and Dad? Resting. They've been very stressed. She didn't move from the doorway. Her body blocked the entrance like a bouncer at a club. You should know, we had a family meeting. Marcus was on video call. We all agreed that some changes need to happen. What changes? Changes in how things are being handled. Mom's condition is getting worse. Dad can't manage everything alone. And frankly, your recent behavior has raised some concerns. My recent behavior? I've been paying their bills for 5 years. She pulled something from her pocket. My house key. The spare I'd given my parents years ago for emergencies. It sat in her palm like evidence. We've decided I'm moving in to help manage things properly. Mom needs supervision with her medications. Dad needs help with household tasks. You've been unreliable lately, and after reviewing your financial situation, we're concerned about your judgment. The words hit like physical things. Unreliable. Poor judgment. We're concerned. You had no right to. We had every right. They're our parents too. And after seeing what you've been doing with your money, we can't trust you to make sound decisions for them. She held up her phone. Screenshots glowed on the screen. I have evidence. Large withdrawals. Risky investments. Suspicious transactions. Dad showed me everything. Those were business expenses. Dad said you told him they were investments. Which is it? I'd never told Dad they were investments. I'd barely discussed my business finances with him at all. He didn't understand consulting or overhead or operating costs. But arguing wouldn't help. I could see it in Rebecca's face. She'd already decided I was the problem, and nothing I said would change her mind. I want to talk to Mom and Dad. They're resting, she repeated. Her voice had that patient tone people use with children or confused elderly people. And honestly, they don't want to see you right now. They're very hurt. Very disappointed. They trusted you, and you've been. She paused, like she was choosing her words carefully. They need time to process everything. Everything you told them, you mean? Everything they learned about what you've been doing. She stepped back and started to close the door. I could see past her into the hallway. Mom's shoes by the door, the ones with the Velcro straps because she couldn't manage laces anymore. Dad's jacket on the hook. The house I'd been coming to every weekend for 5 years. Your key won't work anymore, Rebecca said. We changed the locks this morning. For security. You understand. The door shut. The deadbolt clicked. I stood there on the porch, holding my overnight bag. The tomato plants Dad had mentioned were in the side garden, small and green. He'd planted them without me. Without my help. A car drove past on the street. A dog barked somewhere. Normal afternoon sounds. I walked back to my car. Sat inside. Put my hands on the steering wheel and breathed. Then I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Scrolled past my checking account, my savings, the business account. Found the automatic payment section. Found the reverse mortgage payment. $2,300, scheduled for the 15th of every month, like clockwork. My finger hovered over edit. I didn't press it. Not yet. Instead, I drove to a coffee shop 3 blocks away and sat in the back corner with my laptop. Pulled up every document related to the reverse mortgage. The original agreement with its dense paragraphs of legal language. The cosigner paperwork with my signature next to my parents' signatures. The payment history showing 60 deposits, 5 years of $2,300 every single month. All of it legal. All of it documented. All of it in my name. Rebecca could change the locks. She could move in. She could convince our parents I was irresponsible, reckless, untrustworthy. But she couldn't make the bank payments disappear. She couldn't erase my name from the cosigner documents. She couldn't access the account I'd set up specifically for this, the one she didn't know about, the one she hadn't thought to look for. I sat there for a long time, drinking coffee that went cold while I thought about what kind of person I wanted to be. The kind who walked away? The kind who kept giving even when it wasn't appreciated? The kind who fought back? Then I thought about my mother calling me David. About my father's voice shaking on the phone. About 16 missed calls while I was working to keep my business alive so I could keep paying for their comfort. About Rebecca's face when she handed me my key. The satisfaction in her expression. The smirk. I made my decision. I wouldn't fight. Fighting was messy and emotional and undignified. I would simply stop. I didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't show up at the house demanding to be heard. I went home to my apartment with its beige walls and mismatched furniture and waited. The next payment was due in 12 days. I let it process. Watched the $2,300 leave my account like it had 60 times before. Routine. Normal. The way things had always been. 12 days after that, another payment was due. I let that one process too. I wanted Rebecca to feel secure. To settle in. To unpack her suitcases and hang her clothes in the closet and start thinking about how much better she was at managing things than I ever was. I wanted her to believe she'd won. During those weeks, I got 7 calls from my parents' landline. I didn't answer. Each time, I listened to the voicemail afterward, sitting in my car or my office or my apartment. Dad's voice, apologetic but firm. "We need some time, son. You understand. This isn't easy for us." Then, "Rebecca says you're upset, but this is for the best. She's being very helpful. Then, call when you're ready to talk calmly about the situation." The situation. As if I'd created it. Mom called once. Her voice was confused, fragile. "Michael? Why haven't you visited? Did I do something wrong? Your sister says you're busy with work, but I miss you. Please call." I listened to that one 3 times before I deleted it. Marcus called once. "Dude, what's going on? Rebecca says you've been acting weird. Like, aggressive or something? She showed me some bank stuff. It looked pretty sketchy, man. Are you okay? Do you need to talk to someone? Like, a professional? Ask her to explain the bank statements," I said. She did. "Sounds like you've been making some risky choices. Gambling maybe? No judgment if you need help, but Mom and Dad don't need that stress right now." Gambling. Rebecca had told him I was gambling. I hung up without another word. The third payment went through. $2,300. I watched it deduct from my account and felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no regret. Just emptiness. Then I opened the banking app again. Navigated to the automatic payment settings. Found the reverse mortgage payment. I suspended it. The notification appeared in red text, "Recurring payment paused. No future transactions will be processed until you manually resume." I set my phone down on my desk and stared at it. Now we wait. Reverse mortgages have grace periods. I'd read the contract thoroughly 5 years ago, made notes, filed everything properly. Miss one payment, you get a notice, a polite letter explaining that payment was due and hasn't been received. Miss 2 payments, you get a warning, stronger language, mention of potential consequences. By the 3rd missed payment, the bank starts foreclosure proceedings. They're required to notify all parties on the loan, which meant my parents and me. The first notice arrived 29 days after I suspended the payment. I knew because I'd called the bank to confirm they'd sent it. They had. Certified mail to my parents' address, requiring a signature. My phone rang at 7 in the morning. Rebecca's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. "There's been a huge misunderstanding." Her voice was pitched high, tight with panic. "The bank sent some kind of notice about the mortgage. There's a missed payment. I don't understand. I thought this was handled. I thought it was automatic. Please call back immediately. Mom and Dad are freaking out. Dad's having chest pains. This is serious. Call me back." I deleted the voicemail and poured myself coffee. She called again that afternoon. I was in a meeting with a client, phone on vibrate in my pocket. She called again that evening. She called again at 9 at night. I didn't answer any of them. On the 4th call, I answered. I was sitting in my apartment, eating leftover Chinese food and watching a documentary about deep-sea creatures. The phone vibrated. Rebecca's name. I turned down the TV and answered. "Where have you been?" She shouted immediately. No greeting, no preamble. "Do you know what you've done? Do you have any idea what you've done to them? Hello, Rebecca. Don't hello me. The bank is threatening to foreclose. There's a missed payment on the mortgage. Mom had a panic attack this morning. Dad can't sleep. His blood pressure is through the roof. How could you do this to them? Do what? I kept my voice neutral, curious. The payment. You stopped the payment. What payment? Silence. I could hear her breathing, fast and shallow. The mortgage payment, she said finally. The one you've been making. I've been making a payment on their mortgage? Don't play stupid with me. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You co-signed. You've been paying it for 5 years. Interesting. And how would you know that? More silence. Longer this time. Dad told me, she said carefully. Did he? Because last time I checked, Dad didn't know about the payments. Neither did Mom. I set it up so they wouldn't have to worry about it. So they could just receive the monthly deposit and not think about where it came from or how much it cost. Well, now they know. And they're terrified. The bank says if the payment isn't made within 60 days, they'll start foreclosure proceedings. Do you understand what that means? They'll lose the house. Everything. Then someone should probably make the payment. That's what I'm calling about. You need to make the payment. Why would I do that? Because you've been doing it for 5 years. Because they'll lose everything if you don't. They might. That's true. But I'm not obligated to continue making voluntary payments on a loan I co-signed. The co-signer agreement doesn't require me to make monthly payments. It just means I'm liable if the loan defaults. Which it will, if no one makes the payment. This is extortion, she hissed. No. Extortion would be if I demanded something in exchange for resuming payments. I'm not demanding anything. I'm simply choosing not to continue paying for a house I'm not welcome in. You're punishing them because you're mad at me. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm adjusting my financial obligations based on my current relationship with my family. That seems reasonable, doesn't it? This isn't about being reasonable. This is about Mom and Dad. They didn't do anything to you. Didn't they? I set down my fork. They listened to you. They believed your lies. They changed the locks and told me I wasn't welcome. They chose to trust you over me without ever asking for my side of the story. So no, Rebecca, I don't think they're completely innocent here. They're confused. Mom barely knows what day it is half the time. You can't blame her for it. I'm not blaming her. I'm blaming you. You manipulated them. You used Mom's confusion and Dad's fear to convince them I was doing something wrong. You showed them my private bank statements without context and twisted everything to make me look irresponsible. And you did it while I was out of town, so I couldn't defend myself. I was protecting them. From what? From me making sure they had food and medicine? From me paying their bills so they could live comfortably? What exactly were you protecting them from? She was crying now. I could hear it in her voice, the wet choke of tears. I didn't know about the payments. I swear I didn't know. Dad never told me. I just saw the withdrawals and I thought. You thought I was stealing from them. I thought you might be in trouble. I thought maybe you needed help and were too proud to ask. I thought. You thought I was gambling. You told Marcus I was gambling. I didn't say that exactly. I just said the transactions looked suspicious, and he jumped to conclusions. Convenient. Please, she said, and her voice cracked completely. Please. I was wrong. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have looked at your bank account without asking. I shouldn't have jumped to conclusions. But please don't punish Mom and Dad for my mistake. They'll lose everything. Then I guess you'll need to make the payments. I don't have that kind of money. I have 3 kids in private school. Brad's commission was cut. Our mortgage is $5,200 a month. I can't afford another $2,300. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you moved in to manage things properly. Michael, please, or maybe Marcus can help. He's always talking about the simple life and how money doesn't matter. I'm sure he'd be happy to contribute. Marcus is broke. He's 41 and lives with roommates. He can barely pay his own rent. Then it sounds like you have a problem. We can fix this, she said desperately. You can move back in. We can share responsibilities. I'll apologize to Mom and Dad. I'll explain everything. We can work together. Please. They're our parents. Our family. What mistake was that? The one you'll apologize for? I shouldn't have. I got scared. You were controlling everything. Making all the decisions. I felt shut out. Like I wasn't part of their lives anymore. Like you were the only one who mattered. So you hacked into my bank account. I didn't hack anything. Dad's computer saved your password. I just looked. That's all. I was worried about them, and I looked, and I saw all these withdrawals, and I didn't know what they were for, and I panicked. And instead of calling me to ask, you decided to stage an intervention. I thought you'd lie. I thought you'd cover it up. Because I'm so dishonest? Because I have a history of lying to our parents? She had no answer for that. I listened to her breathe, waited for her to say something else, give me a reason to feel sorry for her. She didn't. Here's what's going to happen, I said finally. You're going to explain everything to Mom and Dad. You're going to tell them how you accessed my bank account without permission. You're going to tell them that I've been paying $2,300 every month for 5 years to keep them comfortable. You're going to tell them how much that adds up to. And then you're going to apologize. I will. I'll do all of that. Just please, resume the payments. After you apologize, and I mean a real apology, not some half-hearted "I'm sorry you feel that way" nonsense, you're going to move out. You're going to give them back their house and their privacy. You're going to return my key and admit that you were wrong. Fine. Done. Whatever you want. And then we're going to have a real family meeting. All 4 of us. No more backdoor conversations or secret accusations. We're going to discuss their care going forward. As a family. As equals. Yes. Okay. I agree to everything. And Rebecca? I paused. If you ever lie to them about me again, I'll let the bank take the house. I'll let them lose everything. And I'll make sure they know exactly whose fault it was. Do you understand? Yes, she whispered. I understand. Good. I'll resume the payments next week. That gives you time to pack and explain and grovel. And Rebecca? Make it convincing. Because if I hear even a hint that you're trying to spin this as anything other than your fault, the deal's off. I hung up. My hands were shaking. I set the phone down and stared at it like it was something dangerous, something that might explode if I moved too quickly. I'd never threatened anyone like that before. Never spoken to anyone with that kind of cold calculation. It felt foreign, like I'd borrowed someone else's voice. But it also felt necessary. I sat there on my couch, alone in my apartment, and tried to figure out if I felt good about what I'd just done. I didn't. But I didn't feel bad either. Mostly, I just felt tired. Rebecca moved out 3 days later. She called to tell me, her voice small and formal, like she was leaving a message for a dentist's office. I explained everything, she said. All of it. Mom and Dad want to see you. They're very sorry. They want you to come over. I'll be there tomorrow. Okay. She paused. Michael? I really am sorry. I know you don't believe me, but I am. I hung up without responding. The next day was Saturday. I stopped at the grocery store first, bought the usual things: Dad's coffee, Mom's yogurt, fresh vegetables, a pound of ground beef for the pasta sauce Dad liked to make. I loaded everything in the trunk and drove to their house. My old key still didn't work. I stood there jiggling it in the lock until Dad opened the door. He looked older than he had 3 weeks ago. Thinner. The skin under his eyes was bruised purple. Come in, he said quietly. The house smelled like coffee and something else, anxiety, maybe, or guilt. Mom was in her chair by the window, the one where she sat to watch the birds. She smiled when she saw me, but her eyes were red. We're sorry, she said immediately. We're so sorry. We didn't know. About the payments. About what you've been doing. I set the groceries on the kitchen counter. Started unpacking. Rebecca should have told us, Dad added. He stood in the doorway between the kitchen and living room, hands in his pockets. He was angry, I realized. Not at me. 5 years. 5 years you've been paying, and we didn't know. We thought the bank was just. We thought it was automatic somehow. We didn't realize you were sacrificing. I wasn't sacrificing, I said, putting the coffee in the cupboard. I wanted to help. $2,300 a month, Mom said softly. For 5 years. That's. She trailed off. She'd always been good at math, even with her memory failing. $138,000, Dad finished. His voice cracked. Son, that's more than we paid for this house originally. That's more than we ever expected anyone to give us. You needed help. I could help. That's what family does. Rebecca said. Mom stopped. Started again. She said she thought you were in trouble. That the money going out of your account looked suspicious. She said she was trying to protect us. She should have asked me first. She should have, Dad agreed. And she shouldn't have looked at your bank account without asking. That was wrong. That was a violation of your privacy. She explained everything, Mom said. How she found your password saved on the computer. How she looked at your statements and saw the withdrawals but didn't see where they were going. She said she panicked. She thought you might be in some kind of trouble. And instead of calling me, she decided to turn you against me. She was wrong, Dad said firmly. We told her that. We told her she should have come to you first. Should have given you a chance to explain. We stood in silence. Outside, a lawnmower started up. Someone's weekend chore. I called the bank this morning, I said. The payment will resume next week. The notice will be rescinded. You're not losing the house. We can't let you keep paying, Mom said. Her hands twisted in her lap. It's too much. We can't ask you to keep doing that. You're not asking. I'm offering. But $138,000 is money I chose to spend. I didn't have to. I wanted to. And I still want to. Unless you're going to change the locks again. Dad pulled something from his pocket. A key. New, shiny, just cut. I changed them back, he said. To the old locks. Your original key works again. And this is a new spare. For emergencies. He handed it to me. It was still warm from his pocket. Rebecca left this morning, Mom said. She took all her things. She cried when she left. She wanted me to tell you she's sorry. She told me herself. She means it, Mom insisted. She made a mistake. A big one. But she does love you. And she loves us. She got confused. I wanted to argue. Wanted to point out that Rebecca hadn't been confused, she'd been vindictive and manipulative and wrong. But Mom looked so tired, and Dad looked so old, and what would arguing accomplish? I'm going to put these groceries away, I said instead. I spent the next hour there. Put away food, checked the furnace filter, replaced a light bulb in the bathroom. Dad followed me around, not helping exactly, just being there. Mom dozed in her chair. Before I left, Dad pulled me aside in the hallway. I need to tell you something, he said quietly. Your mother and I talked. We're updating our will. Everything goes to you. The house, the savings, all of it. Rebecca and Marcus can fight it if they want, but you've earned it. I don't want payment for helping you. I know. That's why you'll get it. He put his hand on my shoulder. What you've done for us, it's more than we ever expected from any of our children. More than we deserved. You deserve everything. So do you. His eyes were wet. We're proud of you. We always have been. And we're sorry we doubted you. I nodded because I didn't trust my voice. I drove home slowly, taking side streets, not rushing. Stopped at a red light and watched people cross in front of me. A couple holding hands. A teenager on a skateboard. An old woman walking a small white dog. Normal lives. Normal problems. Mine felt heavy in a way I hadn't expected. That was a month ago. Things are different now, but not completely different. I still visit every weekend. Rebecca calls every few days, tentative and overly apologetic. She offered to contribute $500 a month to the mortgage payments. I told her she didn't have to, but she insisted. She sends the money on the first of every month like clockwork. Marcus called after he found out what happened. He was angry, at Rebecca, at himself for believing her. He offered to send money too. $150 a month. It's something. But mostly, it's still me. $2,300 a month. I adjusted some investments, cut back on eating out, delayed buying a new car. I'll manage. I always manage. Mom's memory is getting worse. Last week she called me David again, and when I corrected her, she got upset and confused. I didn't correct her the next time. I just held her hand and let her talk about the garden and the tomatoes and how proud she was of her boys. Dad pulled me aside afterward. I don't know how much time we have left, he said. His voice was steady but his eyes weren't. The doctor says her decline is accelerating. Could be months, could be a year. After that. He didn't finish. We'll figure it out, I said. I need you to know something. When we're both gone, everything goes to you. The house, the savings, the insurance. Rebecca and Marcus can contest it if they want, but the will is clear. You've earned it. I don't want payment, I said again. I never did this for payment. I know. That's exactly why you'll get it. We stood in the garden together, watching the tomato plants grow. They were heavy with fruit now, almost ready to harvest. Dad had tied them to stakes so they wouldn't fall over. I planted these thinking you'd be here to help me pick them, he said. Then Rebecca said you weren't coming back, and I thought I'd messed everything up. Thought I'd chosen wrong and lost you. You didn't lose me. I almost did. He looked at me. Don't think I don't know that. Don't think I don't understand how close we came. I didn't know what to say to that. We picked tomatoes in silence, filled a basket with them, brought them inside for Mom to see. She smiled and said they looked wonderful, then asked when we were going to plant them. She'd forgotten we just picked them, but Dad just patted her hand and said soon, we'd plant them soon. I left around 4. Hugged them both. Drove home with the radio off. When I got to my apartment, I sat in the car for a while before going inside. Thought about everything that had happened. Everything that could have happened differently. Rebecca's voice on the phone, cracking with panic. Dad's hand on my shoulder. Mom's confused smile. The key, warm from Dad's pocket. $138,000. More now, actually. Closer to 140. I think about that number sometimes. About what else I could have done with it. A down payment on a house. Retirement investments. Travel. A life less beige. But then I think about Mom taking her medication without rationing. About Dad keeping the heat on in winter. About them eating properly and sleeping soundly and not lying awake at night worrying about money. And the number doesn't seem that big anymore. I still keep the bank statements. They're in a locked file in my home office, backed up to 3 different cloud servers. Not because I expect trouble, but because I learned something important during all of this. Trust, once broken, takes a long time to rebuild. If it rebuilds at all. Rebecca and I are civil now. We're never going to be close, probably. Too much has happened. She looks at me differently now, with caution, maybe, or respect. I'm not sure which. Marcus sent a postcard last week. From Utah this time. He drew a smiley face next to his signature. The payments continue. Every month, on the 15th. $2,300. Plus Rebecca's $500. Plus Marcus's $150. Together, we're managing. My mother asked me yesterday if I was happy. We were sitting in the garden, watching clouds move across the sky. Her hands rested in her lap, swollen and painful. She'd taken her medication that morning without having to choose which pills to skip. Are you? I asked back. She smiled. The real kind, not the confused kind. I'm comfortable. I can afford my medicine. My sons visit me. My daughter calls. Yes, I'm happy. Then I'm happy, I said. She squeezed my hand with her bent fingers. You're a good boy, she said. Don't let anyone tell you different. I sat there with her until the sun started to set, painting the sky orange and pink. Eventually Dad came out and said dinner was ready. We went inside together, and I stayed to eat with them even though I hadn't planned to. The pasta sauce was perfect. Dad had remembered to add the extra garlic, the way I liked it. After dinner, I helped clean up. Then I hugged them both and drove home. The payments will continue. Every month, until they don't need to anymore. I don't see it as revenge now. I'm not sure I ever really did. Maybe it was a test. Maybe it was a boundary. Maybe it was just me figuring out where the line was between helping and being taken advantage of. Rebecca learned something from all of this. I learned something too. The difference is, now everyone knows what my help costs. Not in money, in respect. In trust. In acknowledgement. And somehow, that makes all the difference. I got a text from Dad this morning. Just a photo. The tomato plants, heavy with fruit. A thumbs up emoji. I sent one back. Everything's going to be okay. Not perfect. Not like it was before. But okay. That's enough. Story 3.
My mother texted me on graduation day that she was so sorry but had to skip my law school ceremony because her boyfriend's amateur comedy show was the same night. When I called her in disbelief, she said, "His career needs support right now, you're already successful." I just replied, "I understand," and sat alone at graduation. That night, I made 3 changes to my emergency contacts, my will, and my definition of family, deciding to disown my own mother. That was 7 years ago. Yesterday, in a crowded federal courtroom, I locked eyes with her across the gallery as she realized the lead attorney for the class action lawsuit against her boyfriend's fraudulent business was her own daughter, the same daughter whose graduation she'd missed, the same attorney who'd just dismantled their financial empire piece by piece, and the same person who didn't even flinch when she tearfully mouthed, "Please help us." The text arrived at 10:47 a.m., exactly 3 hours before I was supposed to walk across the stage at Columbia Law School. I was in the bathroom of my tiny studio apartment, mascara wand frozen halfway to my lashes, when my phone buzzed on the sink. "So sorry, sweetie, but I can't make it today. Derek's show is tonight and he really needs me there. You understand, right? Love you so much. So proud." I read it 3 times. The mascara wand clattered into the sink, leaving a black smear across the white porcelain. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, so I gripped the counter edge until my knuckles went bloodless. The bathroom mirror reflected someone I barely recognized, a woman in a cream silk blouse who'd been about to celebrate the hardest 3 years of her life, now staring at a text message that felt like a slap across the face. I called her. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to hear her say it out loud, needed to confirm that this wasn't some cruel joke or autocorrect disaster. "Honey, I knew you'd call." Her voice was rushed, distracted. I could hear traffic in the background, the slam of a car door. "I feel terrible, but Derek's been working so hard on this set, and the venue finally gave him a prime slot. This could be his big break. You're already successful, you don't need me there to prove anything." Something cold settled in my chest, right behind my ribs. Not anger. Not yet. Just a vast, echoing silence where something warm used to live. "I understand," I said. My voice sounded normal. Steady. Have fun at the show. You're the best, Claire. I knew you'd get it. We'll celebrate next week, I promise. Dinner at that place you love? Sure, Mom. I hung up before she could say anything else. Before I could hear her relief at being let off the hook so easily. The ceremony was beautiful. The speeches were inspiring. When they called my name, Claire Elizabeth Morgan, graduating summa cum laude, I walked across that stage with my head high and my smile fixed in place. The applause washed over me like white noise. I shook the dean's hand. I accepted my diploma. I posed for the official photographer with the Columbia banner behind me, alone. In the sea of families clutching balloons and flowers, hugging their graduates with tears streaming down their faces, I stood by myself near the exit and ate a stale cookie from the reception table. It tasted like cardboard. A classmate's mother tried to include me in their family photos, her face soft with pity, and I politely declined. I didn't want pity. I didn't want borrowed families. That night, in my apartment with a cap and gown still draped over my desk chair, I opened my laptop and made 3 changes. First, my emergency contacts. I deleted my mother's number and replaced it with my roommate from undergrad, Sarah, who'd sent me flowers that morning even though she was in Seattle for a wedding. Second, my will. Not that I had much to leave anyone, just student debt and a decent laptop, but I removed her name from every document I could find. Medical proxy. Power of attorney. Beneficiary on my small life insurance policy through the school. Third, and most permanent, I deleted her number from my phone entirely. Not blocked. Deleted. Then I opened a new document and typed a single sentence at the top: family is the people who show up. I didn't know it then, but that night marked the last time I would think of Helen Morgan as my mother. From that moment forward, she became simply Helen, a woman I used to know, a person who'd given birth to me but had forfeited every other right that title conferred. The first few months were harder than I'd expected. She called 16 times in the first 2 weeks, probably trying to schedule that promised dinner. I never answered. She left voicemails that started apologetic and gradually shifted to confused, then irritated. Claire, this is getting ridiculous. Are you seriously this upset about one missed event? You're acting like a child. I deleted each one without listening all the way through. She tried email next. Long, rambling messages about how she'd sacrificed so much as a single mother, how I was being selfish and ungrateful, how she deserved better than this silent treatment. I set up a filter that automatically archived anything from her address. By month 4, the attempts slowed. By month 6, they stopped entirely. I threw myself into work. I'd accepted a position at a mid-sized firm in Manhattan, nothing glamorous but solid experience in corporate litigation. The hours were brutal, 70, sometimes 80 hours a week, but I was grateful for the exhaustion. It left no room for doubt, no space for the small voice that occasionally whispered I was overreacting, that I should forgive her, that family was supposed to be forever. But family was also supposed to show up. I made new traditions. Sarah flew in from Seattle for my actual birthday, not the we'll celebrate when it's convenient version I'd grown up with. My colleague Marcus started inviting me to his family's Sunday dinners, where his boisterous Puerto Rican relatives argued about everything from politics to the best method for making rice, and no one thought twice about setting an extra place at the table. I spent holidays volunteering at a legal aid clinic, helping people who actually needed me. I built a life where I was chosen, not obligated. 2 years into my new life, my real life, I made junior partner. At 29, it was almost unheard of, but I'd earned it through sheer relentless competence. I'd won 3 major cases in 18 months, brought in 2 significant clients, and billed enough hours to make the senior partners notice. The celebration dinner was at an upscale steakhouse in Midtown. Marcus gave a toast. Sarah flew in to surprise me. My supervising partner, Janet, a formidable woman in her 50s who rarely showed emotion, squeezed my shoulder and said, "Your parents must be incredibly proud." "They would be," I said, smiling. Not a lie, exactly. More of a hypothetical. I didn't think about Helen that night. Didn't wonder if she'd somehow heard about my promotion. Didn't imagine calling her to share the news. That part of me had cauterized cleanly, leaving only smooth scar tissue behind. 3 years after graduation, I switched firms. a boutique practice that specialized in class action litigation, particularly cases involving financial fraud and consumer protection. The work was grittier, more personal. Our clients weren't corporations but real people who'd been cheated, lied to, systematically exploited by companies that thought themselves untouchable. I was good at it. Better than good. I had a talent for finding the thread that unraveled everything, the memo that proved knowledge of wrongdoing, the pattern in the spreadsheets that revealed intentional deception, the witness who'd stayed silent until someone finally asked the right questions. I worked on cases against predatory lenders, pyramid schemes disguised as investment opportunities, and fraudulent wellness companies selling false hope in expensive bottles. Each victory felt personal. Each settlement check sent to a client who'd lost their savings, their home, their trust, it mattered. The Morgan case landed on my desk on a Tuesday morning in March, 5 years after I'd walked across that graduation stage alone. The preliminary file was thin, just an initial complaint filed by a group of small business owners in New Jersey who'd been sold on something called the Ascension Method, a business coaching program that promised to exponentially multiply revenue through radical mindset transformation and strategic partnership networks. They'd each paid between $15,000 and $40,000 for intensive coaching, exclusive networking events, and what was described as proprietary business acceleration tools. What they'd actually received were generic motivational seminars, a private Facebook group, and a binder of photocopied worksheets that could have been downloaded from any business blog. When they tried to get refunds, they were told they'd signed ironclad contracts. When they complained publicly, they received threatening letters from lawyers. When they compared notes, they realized the exclusive partnership networks were just other victims being encouraged to buy from each other. It was a classic scheme, just sophisticated enough to avoid immediate red flags, just exploitative enough to destroy lives. The name at the top of the company registration made my coffee cup slip in my hand. Ascension Coaching LLC. Principal, Derek Chen. I sat very still at my desk, staring at that name. Derek Chen. The boyfriend. The amateur comedian who'd needed support on the same night I graduated from law school. The man whose career had been more important than his girlfriend's daughter's milestone. My hands didn't shake this time. They were perfectly steady as I opened my browser and started searching. It didn't take long to find them. Derek had pivoted from comedy to coaching about 3 years ago, apparently discovering that selling people dreams of success was more profitable than trying to make them laugh. His website featured professional photos, him in a fitted suit, arms crossed, staring intensely at the camera with the kind of expression that was supposed to convey depth but mostly conveyed constipation. His bio claimed he'd built multiple 7-figure businesses and coached thousands of entrepreneurs to breakthrough success. There were testimonial videos, promotional webinars, a podcast called Ascend Higher. And in several of the photos on his social media, standing beside him at events, wearing expensive dresses and a proud smile, was Helen. My mother had become his business partner. Not just his girlfriend anymore, but co-founder according to the LLC documents. Her name was on the bank accounts. Her signature was on contracts. She appeared in marketing materials as Helen Morgan, Director of Client Success. She wasn't just supporting his career. She was complicit in the fraud. I closed my laptop and walked to the window of my office. 32 floors below, Manhattan moved in its usual chaos, taxis honking, people rushing, the city indifferent to any single person's crisis or revelation. The glass was cold against my forehead. I could pass this case to someone else. Should pass it to someone else, probably. Conflict of interest, personal involvement, all the reasons that made sense on paper. But I thought about graduation day. About sitting alone while families celebrated around me. About the text message that had arrived with such casual cruelty, as if my achievement were nothing compared to a man's comedy show. About 7 years of silence, of building a new life, of learning that family was the people who showed up. I thought about the clients in that preliminary file, small business owners who'd mortgaged their homes, drained their retirement accounts, borrowed from family members, all because they'd believed in Derek Chen's promises. People who'd lost everything while Derek and Helen took photos in expensive clothes at luxury resorts, posting about their blessed life and abundant mindset. I went back to my desk, opened the file again, and wrote 3 words in my case notes: I'll take it. The investigation took 18 months. Federal cases involving financial fraud moved slowly, methodically, requiring evidence so airtight that defense attorneys couldn't find a single crack to exploit. I needed bank records, contracts, communications, witness testimony, expert analysis. I needed to prove not just that the coaching program had failed to deliver on its promises, but that Derek and Helen had known it would fail, had structured the entire operation around deception. I worked the case personally, logging hours that made even my usual schedule look tame. I interviewed 63 clients who'd been through the Ascension Method program. I listened to their stories, the excitement they'd felt initially, the growing doubt as weeks passed with no results, the shame they felt for having been fooled, the financial devastation many now faced. A woman named Patricia had refinanced her house to pay for the program. When it failed to produce the promised results, she'd lost the house entirely. She now lived with her adult son, sleeping on a fold-out couch, while Derek and Helen posted vacation photos from Turks and Caicos. A man named James had maxed out 4 credit cards and borrowed $20,000 from his elderly father. The debt had destroyed his marriage. His father had died before seeing any of that money repaid. A younger woman, Keisha, had used her entire settlement from a car accident, money she'd earmarked for graduate school, on the program. She trusted Derek's promise that the program would generate immediate cash flow that far exceeds tuition costs. She was now working 2 part-time jobs and had abandoned her dream of becoming a therapist. Their stories fueled me through every late night, every moment of doubt, every time I had to look at another promotional photo of Helen's smiling face. I subpoenaed bank records that showed Derek and Helen had moved nearly $2 million through their business accounts in 3 years, with over 60% going directly to personal expenses, the luxury apartment in Hoboken, the leased Mercedes, the designer clothes, the vacations. Meanwhile, client refund requests were systematically denied. I found emails where Derek discussed the client acquisition funnel and how to maximize lifetime value through upselling additional coaching packages. He'd written to Helen, "These people are so desperate to believe they're one breakthrough away from success. Give them hope and they'll keep paying." Helen had responded, "Just closed 3 more contracts. $45,000 total. This is better than my old job ever was." I traced the proprietary business tools back to their source, generic templates Derek had purchased in bulk from a content marketplace for $200 total, then repackaged and sold for thousands. I documented a pattern of threatening legal action against anyone who left negative reviews or requested refunds, using a law firm that specialized in intimidation tactics rather than legitimate legal work. The case built itself, piece by piece, until I had something so comprehensive that the defense would have no choice but to settle or lose catastrophically at trial. But I wanted trial. Settlements were private, confidential, sanitized. I wanted the evidence read into public record. I wanted Helen to have to sit in a courtroom and listen to every detail of what she'd done, who she'd hurt, how she'd spent money that people had entrusted to her under false pretenses. I wanted her to see me do it. The trial was scheduled for a Tuesday in October, 7 years and 2 months after my law school graduation. The courtroom was packed, 67 plaintiffs had joined the class action, and many of them attended. The gallery filled with people who'd been promised transformation and received devastation instead. I arrived early, setting up at the plaintiff's table with my co-counsel, a sharp woman named Vanessa who specialized in financial forensics. We arranged our files, tested the presentation equipment, reviewed our opening statement one final time. I wore my favorite suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, the kind of armor that made me feel invincible. The defense team arrived at 9:15. 3 attorneys from a firm that specialized in defending white-collar cases, all expensive suits and leather briefcases. Behind them came Derek and Helen. I didn't look up immediately. I heard them before I saw them, Derek's voice carrying across the courtroom, talking too loudly, performing confidence. Then Helen's laugh, higher pitched than I remembered, nervous energy disguised as ease. When I finally raised my eyes, Helen was scanning the courtroom, probably looking for familiar faces among the plaintiffs. Her gaze moved across the gallery, swept past the judge's bench, then landed on me at the plaintiff's table. For a moment, she didn't react. Just looked at me the way you'd look at any attorney in a courtroom, neutral, assessing. Then I saw the recognition hit. Her face went slack, mouth slightly open, eyes widening. She touched Derek's arm, whispered something urgent. He looked at me, and I saw his confusion. He'd never met me, didn't know who I was, couldn't understand why his business partner suddenly looked like she'd seen a ghost. I held Helen's stare, my expression neutral. Professional. Then I turned back to my notes as if she were just another defendant in just another case. The trial proceeded with brutal efficiency. In my opening statement, I laid out the scope of the fraud, the promises made, the money taken, the lives damaged. I spoke about Patricia's lost home, James's destroyed marriage, Keisha's abandoned dreams. I described how Derek and Helen had built their comfortable lifestyle on the desperation of people who trusted them. Helen sat frozen in her chair, face drained of color. Every time I said her name in connection with a document, a decision, a deceptive practice, she flinched slightly. Derek maintained his performance of confidence, but I could see the cracks forming, the tightness around his eyes, the way his hand kept moving to adjust his tie. Over the next 3 days, I called witnesses who described the program's failures in painful detail. I presented the bank records showing where the money had really gone. I played recordings of sales calls where Derek made promises he knew were false. I displayed the emails discussing client lifetime value and exploitation of hope. My cross-examination of Derek was surgical. I'd spent months preparing, and I knew every weakness in his story. When he tried to claim the program had genuine value, I walked him through the generic templates he'd repackaged. When he insisted clients simply hadn't implemented the strategies correctly, I showed him email after email of clients begging for help, reporting that the strategies were vague or contradictory, asking for clarification that never came. "Mr. Chen," I said, standing at the podium with a printed email in my hand, "you wrote to Ms. Morgan in April of 2023 that clients were desperate to believe they're one breakthrough away from success, and that you could give them hope and they'll keep paying. Can you explain what you meant by that?" He stumbled through an answer about encouraging positive mindsets and believing in potential. His attorney objected twice, trying to interrupt the questioning. The judge overruled both times. "Isn't it true," I continued, "that you and Ms. Morgan deliberately structured this program to extract maximum revenue while delivering minimal value, knowing that clients would blame themselves for the program's failure rather than questioning the program itself?" "No, that's not. We genuinely wanted to help." "Then why did you deny every single refund request? All 73 of them?" "People need to commit to the process. Mr. Chen, yes or no, did you ever personally implement the strategies you taught in your program to build a 7-figure business?" Silence. His attorney whispered something urgent. Derek's jaw worked, and I could see him calculating whether the lie was worth it. "I built multiple revenue streams. Yes or no, Mr. Chen?" "The question is overly simplistic, Your Honor," I said calmly. "I'd like to submit into evidence an interview Mr. Chen gave to a business podcast in 2021, before starting Ascension Coaching, where he stated, and I quote, 'I've never successfully run a traditional business. My income has always come from either comedy gigs or teaching others about business concepts I've studied but not personally implemented.'" The courtroom went quiet. Even Derek's attorney looked stunned. Apparently this was news to him too. Helen was crying silently in her chair, mascara tracking down her cheeks. She kept trying to catch my eye, but I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. Every time I glanced toward the defense table, my gaze went through her like she was transparent. On the 4th day, I called Helen to the stand. She walked to the witness box slowly, unsteadily, like someone approaching an execution. When she raised her hand to be sworn in, it was shaking. The court reporter had to ask her twice to speak up when stating her name. I stood at the podium with my notes, looking at the woman who'd given birth to me, raised me through childhood, then chosen a man's amateur comedy show over my law school graduation. She looked older than I'd expected, more gray in her hair, lines around her mouth that hadn't been there before. She wore a navy dress that was trying too hard to look respectable, pearls that were probably costume jewelry. She looked small. "Ms. Morgan," I began, my voice professionally courteous, "you served as Director of Client Success for Ascension Coaching LLC, correct?" "Yes." Her voice cracked. She cleared her throat. "Yes." "Can you describe your role in that position?" She explained, haltingly, that she'd managed client onboarding, handled complaints, coordinated the Facebook group, and assisted with contract negotiations. With each answer, I walked her through the evidence, the denied refund requests she'd personally signed, The threatening letters she'd approved, the promotional materials where she'd endorsed Derek's false claims. Ms. Morgan, you received compensation from Ascension Coaching in the form of a salary and profit distributions, correct? Yes. How much total compensation did you receive over the 3 years the company operated? She hesitated. Her attorney started to object, then seemed to realize the information was already in evidence. Approximately $670,000, Helen whispered. I let that number hang in the air. In the gallery, I heard someone gasp. Patricia, probably, who'd lost her house. And you knew, didn't you, that the program wasn't delivering the results promised to clients? We tried. Derek worked very hard. Ms. Morgan, yes or no, did you know clients weren't getting results? Her eyes filled with fresh tears. She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the moment she decided to try a different tactic. Her expression shifted, softening, becoming vulnerable. Maternal. Claire, she said, her voice breaking on my name. Please. Can we talk about this? I know I hurt you, I know I wasn't there when you needed me, but this isn't about us, is it? These people, they're using you to punish me for being a bad mother, and I understand that you're angry, but, Your Honor, I said, my voice cutting through her words like a blade, please instruct the witness to answer the question asked. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, leaned forward. The witness will address counsel as Attorney Morgan and will respond to the questions without editorializing. Helen's face crumpled. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Ms. Morgan, I repeated, and I made sure my voice carried no emotion, no recognition of our history, nothing but professional detachment. Yes or no, did you know clients weren't receiving the results promised? Yes. The word came out broken. Yes, I knew. I proceeded through the rest of my questions methodically. By the time I finished, Helen was barely coherent, her answers coming between sobs, her carefully constructed image shattered completely. When I returned to my seat, Vanessa squeezed my hand under the table. You okay? She whispered. I nodded. I was better than okay. I was empty in the best possible way, cleansed of something toxic I'd been carrying without realizing it. The defense put on their case, but it was hopeless. Their expert witness on business coaching fell apart under cross-examination. Their character witnesses for Derek and Helen couldn't explain away the documentary evidence. Derek himself, recalled to the stand, became defensive and hostile, which only made him look worse. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, they found for the plaintiffs on every count: fraud, breach of contract, unjust enrichment, violation of consumer protection statutes. The compensatory damages award was nearly $2 million. The punitive damages, meant to punish and deter, added another $3 million. $5 million in total. More than Derek and Helen had, more than they could pay. It would bankrupt them. The judge also ordered injunctions preventing them from operating any similar businesses in the future and referred the case to the U.S. Attorney's Office for potential criminal prosecution. As the verdict was read, Helen's sobs echoed through the courtroom. Derek sat motionless, face gray, finally understanding the magnitude of what he'd lost. The plaintiffs behind me erupted in relieved tears and quiet celebrations. For many of them, even with the award, they'd never fully recover their losses, but at least they had validation, justice, acknowledgement. I felt nothing. Just quiet satisfaction, like solving a complex equation. As the courtroom began to empty, Helen pushed past her attorneys and came toward me. Court security moved to intercept, but I held up a hand, stopping them. Let her come. Let her try. She stood in front of me, makeup destroyed, eyes red and swollen. When she spoke, her voice was desperate, raw. Please, she said. Please, Claire. Help us. You're my daughter. You can't do this to me. To your own mother. Please, there has to be something, some appeal, some way to fix this. You're a lawyer, you know how to. I picked up my briefcase. Closed the latches with 2 decisive clicks. I don't have a mother, I said. My voice was quiet but clear, and I saw the words land like physical blows. I had a woman who gave birth to me, who raised me until I could take care of myself, and who then made very clear where her priorities lay. You chose Derek over me 7 years ago. You chose his comedy show over my graduation. You chose building a fraudulent business with him over integrity. You made your choices, Helen. Now you live with the consequences. Claire, please, these people. I gestured to the gallery, where many of the plaintiffs still lingered. They're the ones who deserved help. They're the ones who trusted you. They're the ones whose lives you destroyed while you posted vacation photos and talked about abundance. I'm just the attorney who proved it. I moved past her toward the exit. She grabbed my arm, her grip desperate. I'm sorry about graduation, she said, words tumbling out in a rush. I'm sorry I wasn't there, I'm sorry I chose wrong, I'm sorry for all of it. But I'm still your mother. That has to mean something. You can't just throw away family. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. Family, I said, is the people who show up. I pulled my arm free gently, not roughly, there was no anger left, just a profound absence of connection, and walked out of the courtroom. Vanessa caught up with me in the hallway. That was the most professional dismantling I've ever witnessed, she said. You good? Yeah. I was. I'm good. We went to the office, filed the post-trial motions, started the process of executing on the judgment. Patricia would get her damages award. James would get his. Keisha would get hers. It wouldn't erase what they'd lost, but it was something. It was justice. That night, alone in my apartment, I opened my laptop and looked at the document I created 7 years ago. Family is the people who show up. Below it, I added a new line, and justice is showing up for the people who can't fight for themselves. I slept better than I had in months. Helen tried to contact me 3 more times over the following weeks, emails I didn't read, letters I returned unopened, one attempted visit to my office that building security politely deflected. After that, silence. I heard through the legal grapevine that she and Derek had separated, that their assets were being liquidated to pay the judgment, that Helen had moved back to her hometown in Pennsylvania. The U.S. attorney did file criminal charges, fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy. That case was still pending. I didn't follow it closely. It wasn't about Helen anymore. It had never really been about Helen, not entirely. It was about the Patricias and the Jameses and the Keishas, about people who'd been sold dreams by people they trusted, about using whatever power I'd built to make sure that trust meant something. 6 months after the trial, I received a letter from Patricia. She'd received her portion of the judgment and used it to make a down payment on a small condo. She included a photo of herself standing in front of her new home, smiling, tears visible on her cheeks. At the bottom, she'd written, "Thank you for showing up." I framed that letter and hung it in my office, right next to my law degree, the one I'd earned alone, walking across that stage with no family watching. The degree that had seemed so empty that day now felt like the beginning of everything that mattered. Sometimes I think about that graduation day, about the text message, about sitting alone at the reception eating stale cookies. I think about how devastated I'd felt, how small. I don't feel small anymore. I feel like exactly who I was meant to become, someone who shows up, who fights for people who need fighting for, who understands that family isn't about blood or obligation but about choice and presence and the decision to matter in someone else's life. Helen made her choices. I made mine. And I'd make them again. The thing about closure is that it doesn't arrive neatly packaged. You don't wake up one morning feeling complete, wounds healed, ready to move forward with a clean slate. Real closure is messier than that. It comes in fragments, in unexpected moments, in the slow realization that certain things simply don't hurt the way they used to. 3 months after the trial, I was promoted to senior partner. At 34, I was the youngest in the firm's history. The celebration was bigger this time. The entire office attended, plus Sarah, who'd flown in from Seattle where she now ran her own consulting business, and Marcus with his wife and their new baby. Janet gave another speech, this one longer, detailing cases I'd won and lives I'd changed through the work. When the applause died down, Sarah pulled me aside near the bar. "You know what's different about you now?" she asked, studying my face with the intensity of someone who'd known me since freshman year of college. "What?" "You're not waiting anymore. For permission, for validation, for someone to tell you you're enough. You just are." I thought about that later, after everyone had left and I was alone in my office, looking out at the Manhattan skyline lit up against the night. She was right. For years after graduation, even before the trial, before finding the Morgan case, I'd been carrying a quiet hope that Helen would somehow come back, apologize properly, choose me the way she never had before. That hope had been a weight I didn't recognize until it was gone. The trial hadn't given me closure. It had simply clarified what I'd already known: some people will never show up, no matter how many chances you give them, and freedom comes from accepting that truth instead of fighting it. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Ms. Morgan, this is Keisha Williams. I don't know if you remember me from the trial. I just wanted you to know I started graduate school last week. Clinical psychology program at NYU. Using my settlement to finally do what I should have done years ago. Thank you for giving me my future back. I saved her number. Added it to my contacts under family, my private list of people who actually mattered. It sat there alongside Sarah, Marcus, Janet, and 47 others I'd collected over 7 years. People who'd shown up. The criminal trial began that winter. I wasn't involved, federal prosecutors handled it, and my testimony was limited to authenticating documents and explaining findings from the civil case. But I attended several days of proceedings, sitting in the gallery alongside some of the plaintiffs who wanted to see justice through to the end. Helen looked different. Smaller, somehow, though she hadn't physically changed much. She wore inexpensive clothes now, no jewelry, her hair unstyled. She sat beside Derek at the defense table, but they didn't touch, didn't look at each other. Whatever partnership they'd had, romantic or business, had clearly fractured under the weight of consequences. The federal prosecutor was a sharp woman in her 40s named Rita Okonkwo, and she was ruthless in the best possible way. She presented evidence of wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, charges that carried serious prison time. The defense strategy seemed to be throwing Derek under the bus while positioning Helen as a naive girlfriend who'd been manipulated, but the emails I'd uncovered during the civil case made that story impossible to sell. Helen had been an equal participant. The evidence was undeniable. During a break on the third day, I stepped outside for air. The federal courthouse steps were crowded with people smoking, talking on phones, lawyers conferring with clients. I found a quiet corner and closed my eyes, feeling the weak winter sun on my face. Claire. I opened my eyes. Helen stood 3 feet away, having somehow slipped past the people between us. Up close, she looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, skin sallow, the kind of tired that comes from months of stress and poor sleep. Don't, I said simply. Not angry, just firm. We have nothing to talk about. I know you won't forgive me. I'm not asking for that. Her voice was quiet, stripped of the desperation it had carried in the courtroom. I just need you to know something. The night of your graduation, after Derek's show, I realized I'd made a mistake. A huge one. I tried to call you. I know. 16 times in 2 weeks. No, I mean that night. Right after the show ended. I called you at midnight, crying, apologizing. You didn't answer. I tried again the next morning. And the next day. And I kept trying because I thought if I could just explain. She stopped, swallowing hard. But you'd already decided, hadn't you? You'd already cut me out. I looked at her carefully. You're telling me this because you think I overreacted? Because you tried to apologize after the fact, so I should have given you another chance? No. I'm telling you because I want you to understand that I knew immediately that I'd chosen wrong. And I spent years trying to fix it, and you wouldn't let me. The audacity of it took my breath away. Even now, even after everything, she was trying to shift responsibility. To make her attempted apologies, made only after she'd already missed the event, already made her choice clear, into some kind of redemption that I'd cruelly rejected. Helen, I said, and my voice was calm, almost gentle. You're still not getting it. The graduation wasn't the problem. It was the symptom. It was the final, clearest example of a pattern that had existed my entire life. You apologizing afterward didn't erase that pattern. It just proved you still didn't understand what you'd done wrong. I was a single mother working 2 jobs, and I was grateful for that. I never expected perfection. But I did expect you to prioritize me over your boyfriend's hobby. I expected you to show up for the biggest milestone of my academic career. And when you didn't, I expected you to understand why that mattered instead of defending your choice and getting angry at me for being upset. Her eyes filled with tears. I can't take it back. I can't change it. What do you want from me? Nothing, I said. I want nothing from you. I stopped wanting anything from you 7 years ago. That's what you can't seem to accept. You keep thinking there's some combination of words, some apology or explanation that will fix this, but there isn't. You made a choice. I made a different choice. We're done. I'm going to prison, Claire. Her voice broke. 3 to 5 years, my attorney says. And when I get out, I'll have nothing. No money, no home, no career. I'll be almost 60 years old starting over with a felony record. I felt no satisfaction in that, but I felt no guilt either. Just a quiet recognition of cause and effect, choices and consequences. The people you defrauded will also be starting over, I said. Some of them are older than you'll be. Some of them lost more than you're losing. The difference is they didn't choose this. You did. She stared at me, and I saw the moment she finally understood that I wasn't going to soften, wasn't going to help, wasn't going to be the daughter she wanted me to be. I hope someday you have children, she said, her voice turning bitter. And I hope they turn their backs on you the way you turned yours on me. Then you'll understand what this feels like. I picked up my bag from the step beside me. If I have children, I'll show up for their graduations. I'll make them the priority. I'll choose them over convenient excuses and other people's needs. So no, I don't think I'll understand what this feels like. Because I'll never put them in this position. I walked back into the courthouse without looking back. That night, Sarah called. I told her about the encounter, about Helen's words, about the strange absence of emotion I felt. Not triumph, not anger, not even sadness. Just distance. You know what I think? Sarah said. I think you're not punishing her. You're just not saving her. And she can't tell the difference. That felt right. Helen had spent years expecting me to fix things, to bridge the gap she'd created, to do the emotional labor of maintaining our relationship despite her repeated failures. When I stopped doing that work, she experienced it as abandonment rather than recognizing it as the natural consequence of her choices. The jury convicted Derek and Helen on all counts. Sentencing was scheduled for 3 months later. I didn't attend, I'd seen enough, and my presence wasn't required. According to news reports, Derek received 4 years in federal prison. Helen received 3.5, plus restitution orders that would follow her for decades. I felt no triumph when I read those headlines. Just a quiet sense that the system had worked, that justice had been served, that the people who'd been harmed had been heard and validated. Life continued. I took on new cases, a predatory auto lending scheme in Delaware, a fraudulent timeshare operation in Florida, a multi-level marketing company disguising itself as a legitimate business opportunity. Each case brought new clients with heartbreaking stories, new opportunities to prove that someone was listening, that the law could be a tool for protection rather than just punishment. I started teaching, too. A seminar at Columbia Law on consumer protection and fraud litigation. The first time I walked into that classroom, I thought about graduation day, about sitting alone, about the journey from that moment to this one. I told my students the same thing on the first day of every semester: the law is powerful, but only if you use it for people who need it. Choose your clients carefully. Choose to show up. Some of them understood immediately. Others learned over time. A few never got it, and those were the ones who ended up at corporate firms defending the kind of people I spent my career prosecuting. On the 7th anniversary of my graduation, exactly 14 years after that text message, I received an envelope at my office. No return address, postmarked from a federal correctional facility in West Virginia. I almost threw it away without opening it. But curiosity won. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, covered in Helen's handwriting. Claire, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to respond. I'm writing because my therapist says I need to take accountability without expecting anything in return. So here it is. You were right about everything. I chose Derek over you, not just at graduation but in 1,000 small ways before that. I prioritized my comfort, my relationship, my fear of being alone over being your mother. I saw you becoming successful and independent, and instead of being proud, some part of me resented that you didn't need me anymore. So I pulled away first, told myself you were fine, convinced myself that missing one event wasn't a big deal because you had so many other achievements ahead. I was wrong. It was a big deal. You needed me to be there, and I wasn't. You needed me to choose you, and I didn't. The fraud case, I'm not going to defend that either. I knew what we were doing was wrong. I knew people were getting hurt. But the money was good, and Derek made me feel important in a way I hadn't felt in years, and I told myself we'd fix it later, make things right eventually. I never did. I just kept taking the money and posting photos and pretending everything was fine. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just telling you that I understand now. You didn't abandon me. You set a boundary I'd already crossed. You didn't disown me. You just stopped pretending we had a relationship I'd already destroyed. I hope you're happy. I hope you've built the life you deserve. I hope someday you have a family who shows up for you the way I never did. I'm sorry I wasn't better. I'm sorry I wasn't enough. Helen, I read it twice. Look for the hidden manipulation, the subtle guilt trip, the request buried in the apology. But it wasn't there. It was just an acknowledgement, finally, of truth. I filed the letter in a folder at the back of my cabinet. Not prominently displayed like Patricia's thank you note, but not thrown away either. Just filed. Evidence of growth, maybe. Or at least awareness. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. The letter had been for her, not for me, a step in her own journey toward understanding who she'd been and what she'd done. I didn't need to participate in that journey. I'd already walked my own. 2 years later, Marcus invited me to his daughter's 5th birthday party. His mother, Elena, pulled me aside in the kitchen while the kids destroyed a piñata in the backyard. Marcus tells me you don't have family, she said, her accent thick, her eyes warm. I have family, I corrected gently. Just not the traditional kind. She considered this, then nodded. Family is not who gives birth to you. Family is who claims you, who keeps you, who shows up. You understand this, yes? Yes, I said. I understand. Good. Then you understand that you are family to us. To Marcus, to me, to all of us. You show up. So we show up for you. This is how it works. She hugged me, strong and fierce, and I realized I was crying. Not from sadness, not from grief, but from the overwhelming relief of being chosen, of being claimed, of mattering to people who had no obligation to care but did it anyway. That's the thing about building your own family, it's harder than accepting the one you're born into, requires more intention and effort and vulnerability. But it's also more honest. No one is there out of duty or guilt or genetic accident. They're there because they choose to be, because the relationship matters enough to maintain, because showing up is a mutual commitment rather than a one-sided hope. I'm 40 now. Senior partner at a firm I helped build into one of the most respected consumer protection practices in the country. I have a brownstone in Brooklyn with a garden I actually use. I have Sarah, who visits quarterly and calls weekly. I have Marcus and his family, who've adopted me so thoroughly that his daughter calls me Aunt Claire and doesn't understand why we don't have the same last name. I have Janet, who retired last year and now mentors my younger associates. I have 47 people in my phone under family and another 100 or so in a broader circle of people who matter, who show up, who care. I have a good life. A chosen life. A life I built deliberately from the rubble of what I thought family was supposed to be. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about that text message. About graduation day. About sitting alone at the reception eating stale cookies. And I think about how devastated 25-year-old Claire would be to know that her mother would never come back, never choose her, never be the parent she needed. But I also think about how proud she'd be to see who I became instead. How I took that devastation and turned it into purpose. How I learned that being alone isn't the same as being abandoned, that starting over isn't the same as giving up, that choosing to walk away from toxicity is actually the bravest form of self-love. I don't know where Helen is now. She was released from prison 18 months ago, and I haven't heard from her since that letter. Part of me hopes she's found peace, built a better life, learned to take accountability without expecting redemption in return. Part of me doesn't think about her at all. Both parts are true. Last month, I was invited to speak at Columbia Law's graduation ceremony. Standing at that podium, looking out at hundreds of graduates in their caps and gowns, surrounded by families clutching flowers and cameras, I thought about my own graduation. About the girl I'd been, sitting alone, eating that stale cookie, believing she had no one. I told them what I'd learned, That success isn't about being the smartest or the most talented, but about showing up consistently for the things and people that matter. That family is built, not inherited. That justice is a practice, not a destination. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is set a boundary and hold it even when the whole world tells you you're being too harsh, too unforgiving, too cold. Some of you have families here today, I said, scanning the crowd. Be grateful for them. Show up for them the way they're showing up for you. And some of you are sitting alone today, wondering why the people who should be here aren't. To you, I want to say this: their absence is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their capacity. And you will build your own family, a better one, a chosen one, a family that shows up because they want to, not because they have to. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, 3 students approached me, crying, thanking me for understanding, for seeing them. I gave them my card. Told them to reach out if they ever needed anything, advice, connections, just someone who understood what it meant to walk across that stage alone. That's what showing up looks like. Not grand gestures or dramatic rescues, just consistent presence, small acts of care, the decision to matter in someone else's life. Helen taught me what family shouldn't be. Everyone else taught me what it could be instead. And that, it turns out, was the greatest gift of all, not the revenge, not the justice, not the victory in the courtroom, but the slow, steady realization that I didn't need the people who'd abandoned me to build a life worth living. I just needed to show up for myself, and for the people who showed up for me in return. So I do. Every single day. And I'd make that choice again.
Story 4.
My parents called a family meeting after discovering $3,000 in fortnight charges on my dad's credit card. When my golden child brother immediately blamed me, my father believed him without question, demanding I pay it back from my savings account. I silently pulled up the account history on my phone, proving it was only accessed from my brother's devices. My parents still said he deserves another chance. That was 3 weeks ago. Yesterday, my brother called panicking about his college tuition payment being rejected. I just smiled and said, "I guess you should have thought about that before spending Dad's money." The silence on the other end lasted exactly 4 seconds. I know because I counted, my finger hovering over the red button, deciding whether to end the call or let him speak. He chose panic. "Mia, what are you talking about? I need you to call Mom and Dad right now. The bursar's office says the payment bounced, and if I don't fix this by Friday, they're dropping all my classes. This is serious." I shifted the phone to my other ear, settling deeper into the library chair where I'd been studying for my organic chemistry midterm. Outside, November rain tapped against the windows, the kind that makes everything look gray and honest. "Sounds serious," I said. "What does that have to do with me?" His voice climbed half an octave. "You need to tell them this is a mistake. They set up autopay for my tuition at the start of semester. Something's wrong with the account." Nothing was wrong with the account. I knew exactly what happened to that autopay, because I'm the one who canceled it 2 weeks ago. Let me back up. 3 weeks ago, I came home for fall break expecting the usual: Mom's pot roast, Dad asking about my grades, my brother Tyler barely acknowledging my existence between his gaming sessions. Instead, I walked into an inquisition. They were waiting in the living room, arranged like a tribunal. Dad in his recliner, still wearing his work polo from the dealership. Mom perched on the couch arm, lips pressed into that thin line that meant someone was in trouble. Tyler sprawled across the sectional, controller in hand, but screen paused, which should have been my first clue something was off. Tyler never paused his games voluntarily. "Sit down, Mia," Dad said, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. I sat. My backpack still hung from one shoulder, containing 4 library books I planned to read over break and a half-eaten granola bar from the drive home. I set it down carefully, buying time to read the room. Dad's jaw was tight. Mom wouldn't meet my eyes. Tyler was staring at his phone, one thumb scrolling, the picture of disinterest. "We need to talk about your spending," Dad said. My spending. I felt my stomach twist, that sick drop you get on roller coasters. I'd bought exactly 3 things in the past month: textbooks, groceries, and a replacement charger after mine frayed. My checking account had $847 in it. My savings had $4,200, money I'd scraped together from 2 years of summer jobs, birthday gifts, and the small scholarship I didn't use for tuition. "What spending?" I asked. Dad leaned forward, elbows on knees, and I noticed the paper in his hand. A credit card statement. Don't play games with me. $3,000, Mia. $3,000 in charges over the last 2 months. The number hit me like cold water. For what? You tell me. He thrust the statement toward me. I took it, hands steadier than I felt, and scanned the charges. Page after page of them. Small amounts mostly, $9.99 here, $24.99 there, a few larger ones for $99.99. All to Epic Games. All Fortnite. I don't play Fortnite. I tried it once at a friend's house freshman year and got motion sick within 10 minutes. The colors were too bright, the building mechanic too frantic. I never downloaded it, never made an account, never thought about it again. This wasn't me, I said, and I was proud of how calm my voice sounded, because inside I was already putting pieces together, and I didn't like the picture forming. Then who was it? Mom spoke for the first time, her voice thin, disappointed. That hurt worse than Dad's anger. These charges all came from your account, Mia. My account? The Fortnite account, Tyler said, finally looking up from his phone. His voice carried just enough concern to sound genuine. It's registered under your email. Of course it was. The email I created in middle school, back when I thought inserting X into every word was cool. I'd stopped using it years ago but never closed it. Too much hassle, too many old accounts tied to it. I use my college email for everything now. I can prove it wasn't me, I said, pulling out my phone. My fingers felt numb as I navigated to Epic's website, logged into the account. The password was saved in my browser from some automated password manager sync I'd forgotten about. Look, there's account history. Login locations. Device information. I pulled up the activity log and turned the screen toward them. Every login, every purchase, every game session, all from Tyler's PlayStation, his phone, his iPad. Different devices, same network. Our home network. The timestamps told the whole story: 2 a.m. gaming sessions on school nights, purchases made during family dinners when I was 3 hours away at college. Dad took my phone, his reading glasses sliding down his nose as he squinted at the small text. I watched his face, waiting for the moment recognition would hit, for the apology to form on his lips. Instead, he handed the phone back. Tyler, is this true? I mean. Tyler set down his phone, finally giving us his full attention. He had the grace to look embarrassed, cheeks flushing the way they used to when Mom caught him sneaking cookies before dinner. Yeah, okay, I used Mia's old email. But I didn't think it was a big deal. She never uses it anymore, and I didn't have my own account set up yet. You didn't think racking up $3,000 in charges was a big deal? My voice came out sharper than intended, cutting through the careful calm I'd been maintaining. I was going to pay it back, Tyler said, and there was the key phrase, the magic words that had gotten him out of trouble his entire life. Tyler was always going to do something. Going to clean his room, going to finish his homework, going to call Grandma back. The intention was supposed to count for more than the action. When? I asked. After you maxed out another card? Mia. Dad's voice held a warning. That's enough. That's enough. Not enough anger, enough questions, enough proof, just enough from me. I looked at Mom, pleading silently for her to see what was happening, to step in the way she used to when we were kids, and Tyler blamed me for the broken vase, the missing cookies, the dent in her car. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Tyler, honey, why did you need all those? What are they, exactly? Skins, mostly, Tyler mumbled. And the battle pass. And some V-Bucks for my friends. I was doing really well in tournaments, and having the right skins makes a difference. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows that. As if cosmetic items in a video game were somehow essential, worth $3,000 of someone else's money. I thought about my sophomore year, when I'd wanted to join the pre-med club's spring break mission trip. The cost was $800, and I'd been too embarrassed to ask my parents for it, knowing money was tight. I'd picked up extra shifts at the campus coffee shop instead, burning both ends of every candle until I had enough. Tyler had spent nearly 4 times that on digital clothing for a character that didn't exist. You stole from Dad, I said flatly. You committed fraud. That's what this is. I didn't steal, Tyler shot back, straightening up. I borrowed. There's a difference. Only if you had permission. Kids. Dad raised his hand, the universal signal for ceasefire. This isn't helping. The question is how we fix this. Tyler needs to pay it back, I said immediately. Every cent. Tyler's eyes widened. With what money? I'm a full-time student. I don't have a job. Then get one. The words came out clipped, final. I had 3 jobs last summer. You can manage one. Your sister has a point, Dad said, and hope flickered in my chest for half a second before he continued. But $3,000 is a lot. It'll take him months to earn that while keeping up with school. He should have thought about that before spending it. Mia. Mom's voice had shifted from disappointment to something firmer, something that made my spine straighten. We understand you're upset, but Tyler made a mistake. We're not going to ruin his college experience over this. But you'll ruin mine? The question hung in the air, sharp and clean. Mom blinked, confused. What are you talking about? My savings, I said. You're about to ask me to pay for this, aren't you? The silence was answer enough. I watched my father's face, the way his eyes slid away from mine. Mom studied her fingernails. Tyler had the decency to look uncomfortable, shifting against the couch cushions. You have more saved up, Dad finally said. And Tyler needs to focus on his studies. He's got that big engineering project due next month, and if his grades slip, he could lose his scholarship. I have exams too, I said, voice cracking despite my best effort. I have a 3.8 GPA that I'm trying to maintain for med school applications. That money is for MCAT prep courses. For application fees? We'll pay you back, Dad interrupted. Once Tyler graduates and gets a job, we'll work out a payment plan. Once Tyler graduates. 2 more years of excuses, of priorities that didn't include me. I thought about all the times my achievements had been met with "that's nice, honey," while Tyler's B's were celebrated with his favorite dinner. The time I made Dean's List and Tyler made varsity benchwarmer, and guess whose photo made it to the mantel? No, I said. Dad's eyebrows rose. Excuse me? No. I'm not paying for Tyler's mistake. My hands were shaking now, adrenaline flooding my system. I'd never said no to my father before. Not like this. Not with nothing held back. Mia Louise Carter. Mom's voice went cold, pulling out the full name like a weapon. This is family. We help each other. Tyler didn't help me. He framed me. He didn't frame you, Dad said, exasperated. He used your email address. That's different. Is it? You believed I spent $3,000 on a game I don't play without asking me a single question first. You saw those charges and immediately assumed your daughter was irresponsible and lying about it. That's not fair, Mom said. What's not fair is that Tyler gets away with everything because he's got potential and I'm just supposed to clean up after him. I stood up, grabbed my backpack. You want the money? Asked Tyler to sell his PlayStation. His gaming PC. All those skins he bought. Let him experience actual consequences for once. Sit down, Dad commanded. We're not done here. But I was. I was so done. I'm going back to campus. Let me know when you want to have a real conversation about this instead of just figuring out how to make it my problem. I made it to my car before the tears came. Angry tears, frustrated tears, the kind that burn hot and don't provide any relief. I sat in the driveway for 20 minutes, watching the house through my rearview mirror, waiting for someone to come after me. To knock on my window and say they were sorry, that they'd been wrong, that they'd actually listened to what I said. No one came. I drove back to campus that night instead of staying for the weekend like I'd planned. My roommate found me stress-eating cheese crackers at midnight, mascara streaked down my face, and held me while I cried in a way my mother should have. For 3 days, I waited for an apology. A text. A call. Something. Instead, I got a voicemail from Dad explaining that he'd taken care of the situation and that we didn't need to discuss it further. He sounded relieved, like a problem had been solved. I called him back. What does taken care of mean? Your mother transferred the money from your savings account. We have the login from when we set it up for you. We're depositing $50 a month back into it from Tyler's allowance until it's paid off. The room tilted. You took my money without asking? We told you what needed to happen. You left. We had to make a decision. That's theft, Dad. That's literally theft. Don't be dramatic. It's your money being used for a family issue. Tyler's going to pay you back. At $50 a month, that'll take 5 years. Then it takes 5 years. Mia, I need you to be the bigger person here. Your brother made a mistake. You're in a better position to handle this right now. The bigger person. Code for the more convenient person. The person whose dreams could be deferred because they weren't as shiny, as immediate, as expensive as Tyler's. Fine, I said, and hung up. I wasn't fine. I was planning. See, there's something my parents didn't know about that savings account. When I'd opened it at 16, they'd been joint holders, required for minors. But 2 weeks after my 18th birthday, I'd gone to the bank and removed them, converting it to an individual account. The online login was the same, the account number unchanged. They'd never noticed they no longer had actual access, just viewing privileges through the old login credentials that I'd never bothered to change. The transfer they'd made had gone through only because I hadn't stopped it. I could have. Should have. But I let it happen because I needed them to believe they'd won. While they thought they'd solved the problem, I opened my laptop and did some research. Tyler's college had a parent portal my parents checked religiously. I still had their login information from sophomore year when they'd asked me to check Tyler's grades while they were on vacation. People are creatures of habit. They'd never changed the password. I logged in. Navigated to the billing section. Found the auto-pay authorization for spring semester tuition, $6,800, scheduled to process on December 1st. I stared at that number for a long time. Almost exactly double what Tyler had stolen. What my parents had stolen on his behalf. My finger hovered over the cancel auto-pay button. This was the line. Cross it, and I became something different. Someone who'd be justified in their own mind but possibly cruel in everyone else's. Someone who'd hurt Tyler to make a point. But wasn't that what they'd done to me? Hurt me to protect him? I clicked cancel. Then I cleared my browser history, logged out, and closed my laptop. For 2 weeks, I went about my life. Studied for exams, picked up extra shifts at work to rebuild my savings the hard way, ignored the family group chat where mom shared recipes and Tyler posted gaming memes. I didn't confirm Thanksgiving plans. I didn't respond to dad's texts asking about my car maintenance schedule. I became a ghost in my own family, present in name only. The deadline came and went. December 1st passed. Then December 2nd. On December 3rd, my phone rang. Tyler. Which brings me back to where I started, sitting in the library with rain against the windows and my brother's panic crackling through the speaker. You need to tell them this is a mistake, Tyler was saying. The payment bounced, and if I don't fix this by Friday, it didn't bounce, I said calmly. It was never submitted. I canceled the auto-pay. The silence was longer this time. 7 seconds. You what? I canceled it. 2 weeks ago. Why would you? His voice cut off as understanding dawned. When he spoke again, he sounded younger, uncertain. Because of the Fortnite thing? Because you stole $3,000 and let me take the fall. Because mom and dad took my money to cover for you. Because none of you thought I deserved an apology or even a conversation about it. Mia, come on. That's ancient history. This is my tuition. This is serious. It was serious when it was my savings too. You didn't seem to care then. That's different. I was going to pay you back. At $50 a month. Want to do the math on that? He didn't respond. I could hear him breathing, could picture him pacing his dorm room the way he used to pace the house when he was anxious. Despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy. Tyler wasn't evil. He was just spoiled, selfish in the way that people become when they've never had to consider anyone else's needs above their own. Please, he said, and the word came out small. I'll get dropped from all my classes. I'll lose my scholarship. I'll have to come home and start over next fall. Then you'll understand how it feels to have your plans derailed by someone else's selfishness. I'm your brother. You're my brother when you need something, I corrected. The rest of the time, I'm just the person who's supposed to make your life easier. That's not true. Name one time in the last year you've asked me how I'm doing. Silence again. Longer this time. I can fix this, I said eventually, because despite everything, I'm not actually cruel. But not for free. What do you want? He sounded wary, like he was expecting me to demand something impossible. I want my money back. All of it. By the end of the month. Mia, I don't have that kind of cash. I have to sell your gaming setup, I finished. Your PlayStation, your PC, your monitors, controllers, games. All of it. List it online, price it to move, and transfer every penny to my account. But that's my stuff. That setup took me years to build. And my savings took me years to build. Guess we both lose something that matters. Mom and Dad will kill me if I sell it. Then tell them what happened. Explain how I canceled your tuition payment because you stole from me, they enabled it. See if they think I'm being unreasonable. I could practically hear him thinking, weighing his options. Tyler had always been strategic when he needed to be. He'd realized quickly that going to our parents would mean admitting what I'd done, which would force them to confront their own actions. They'd have to choose between backing me up and acknowledging they'd been wrong, or supporting him and watching him lose his scholarship anyway because the deadline was Friday and anger doesn't pay tuition. If I do this, Tyler said slowly, you'll reactivate the payment? I'll pay the tuition myself, I corrected. Direct payment to the bursar's office, confirmation email to your student account. I'm not trusting autopay or our parents anywhere near this. And then we're even? Then you're even with me. What you owe mom and dad for that credit card is between you and them. He laughed, a short, bitter sound. They'll make me get a job. Welcome to adulthood. It's not as fun as Fortnite, but the graphics are better. Another pause. You've changed, Mia. No, I said, and I meant it. I've just stopped letting you and everyone else convince me I'm supposed to be smaller than I am. Fine. I'll start listing stuff tonight. But this is messed up. You know that, right? This is really messed up. Yeah, I agreed. It is. But you started it. I'm just finishing it. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking again, but differently this time. Not from anger or fear, from the strange, electric feeling of having drawn a boundary and held it. My phone buzzed immediately. Mom calling. I let it go to voicemail. Then Dad. Then Mom again. Tyler must have called them, spilling everything in a panic. Let them sit with it for a while. Let them wonder what I'd say, how I'd justify it, whether they'd push too far this time. I silenced my phone and went back to studying. Organic chemistry doesn't pause for family drama, and I had a test worth 20% of my grade on Friday. That evening, my phone showed 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. I read through them all without responding, watching my family's panic unfold in real time. Mom's text started with concern. Mia, honey, Tyler says there's an issue with his tuition. Please call me. They evolved into confusion. I don't understand what's happening. Did you really cancel his payment? Then anger. This is not how we raised you. Call me immediately. Dads were simpler, more direct. Call now. This isn't a joke, Mia. You're making a big mistake. Tyler's were desperate. I'm listing everything. The PC is up for $800. Someone wants the PlayStation for $350. Mia, please, Mom is losing it. That last one almost broke me. Almost. But I'd spent too many years watching my mother lose it over Tyler's problems while barely noticing mine. She'd survived this one too. I responded to Tyler only, send me screenshots of every sale confirmation. Money in my account by Sunday night or no payment. He sent back a thumbs up. No argument, no insults. Just compliance. The sales rolled in over the next 2 days. Tyler's gaming empire dismantled piece by piece, sold to strangers who didn't care about the sentimental value, who just wanted a good deal on used electronics. He sent me updates compulsively, like he needed me to witness his sacrifice. The PlayStation bundle, $380. The gaming PC, $1,200 to some college kid 3 towns over. The monitor, keyboard, mouse, headset, another $400 total. His game collection, $150 to a resale shop. By Sunday afternoon, my account showed a deposit of $2,847. Not the full $3,000, but close. Tyler sent one final text, that's everything. That's literally all of it. I'm $153 short. I sat with that number for a while. I could push for the rest. Could demand he find odd jobs or sell textbooks or go without meals until he scraped together the balance. Could make him hurt just a little bit more. Instead, I opened my banking app and transferred $6,800 directly to Tyler's college bursar office, with his student ID in the notes field. Then I sent him the confirmation. We're even, I texted. But Tyler? Don't ever use my name for anything again. Not my email, not my accounts, not my reputation. I'm done being your backup plan. He didn't respond. I didn't expect him to. Monday morning, I finally called my mother back. She answered on the first ring. Mia. Her voice was raw, like she'd been crying. What have you done? I protected myself, I said. The same thing you should have done for me 3 weeks ago. Tyler could have lost everything. I almost did lose everything. You took my money without asking. You chose his comfort over my future. It's not that simple. It is, though. I kept my voice gentle, Because for all her faults, my mother loved me. She just loved Tyler more, or louder, or first. Mom, I need you to hear me. Tyler stole Dad's credit card and blamed me. You and Dad believed him immediately. You didn't investigate, didn't question, didn't even seem to consider I might be telling the truth. And when I proved it wasn't me, you still made it my problem to solve. We were trying to keep the family together. No, you were trying to keep Tyler from facing consequences. That's not the same thing. I heard her breath catch. So you hurt him to prove a point? I hurt him to get back what was mine. There's a difference. I don't know if I can forgive this, Mia. And there it was. The implicit threat that had governed my entire childhood. Be good, be quiet, be convenient, or lose our approval. Except I'd already lost it, hadn't I? I'd lost it the moment they chose Tyler's version of events over mine. The forgiveness they were withholding was forgiveness I'd never actually had. That's okay, I said, and I surprised myself by meaning it. You don't have to forgive me. But I need you to understand that I'm not going to be the person who absorbs everyone else's problems anymore. I'm not your emotional support child. I'm your daughter, and I deserve the same grace you give Tyler. Tyler is younger. Tyler is 19. He's old enough to steal $3,000, so he's old enough to face what comes after. And you and Dad are old enough to stop enabling him. Your father is very disappointed in you. I'm disappointed in him too. Guess we'll both have to live with it. We hung up shortly after. There was more said, more accusations and justifications, more circular arguments that went nowhere. But that exchange was the heart of it, my mother offering conditional love, me refusing to meet the conditions. I didn't go home for Thanksgiving. Told them I'd picked up shifts at work, which was true. I also didn't want to sit at a table and pretend everything was fine while Tyler glared at me over the stuffing and my parents tried to smooth things over with forced pleasantries. My roommate invited me to her family's celebration instead. I helped her mom cook, played cards with her little sister, felt what it was like to be in a room where I didn't have to earn my place at the table. It felt like breathing after holding my breath for years. Tyler and I didn't speak for a month. When we finally did, it was brief, awkward. He'd gotten a job at the campus bookstore. 15 hours a week at minimum wage, just enough to cover his expenses now that he didn't have an allowance. He didn't apologize, but he didn't blame me either. We existed in a truce built on mutual understanding. He'd crossed a line, I'd crossed one back, and now we were both standing on opposite sides trying to figure out if there was a bridge. My parents came around slower. Mom called on my birthday, 2 months after everything, and we had a real conversation for the first time. She didn't apologize outright, but she said she understood why I'd been upset. Said she should have listened better. Said she was trying. It wasn't enough, but it was something. Dad sent a check for $4,200, the exact amount they'd taken from my savings. The memo line said college fund. No note, no explanation. I deposited it and sent a thank you text. We were both better at transactions than emotions. Things aren't fixed. I don't know if they'll ever be what I once thought they were, back before I understood that family isn't just about love, it's about respect. About seeing each other clearly, even when it's uncomfortable. About holding people accountable because you believe they can be better, not excusing them because it's easier. Tyler still plays video games, but he uses his own money now. Borrowed a friend's console, saves up for titles, has learned the valuable skill of distinguishing between want and need. He's not my best friend, but he's not my enemy either. He's just my brother, flawed and human, figuring it out like the rest of us. I'm back in their lives now, but differently. I visit for holidays, keep conversations light, maintain boundaries they're slowly learning to respect. I don't offer money when Tyler mentions being broke. I don't take on emotional labor that isn't mine to carry. I show up as myself, complete with sharp edges and unmet needs, and if that makes me harder to love, then that's information too. The thing about revenge, or payback, or consequences, or whatever you want to call what I did, is that it changes you. Not in some dramatic, movie moment way. Just in the quiet certainty that you can survive disappointing people. That you can hold your ground when everyone's telling you to let it go. That sometimes the cost of peace is pieces of yourself you can't afford to lose. I don't regret canceling that tuition payment. Maybe that makes me petty. Maybe it makes me vindictive. But it also makes me someone who learned that fairness won't be given freely. Sometimes you have to take it back with both hands, consequences and all. My brother learned to value money he earns himself. My parents learned I have limits. And I learned that being the bigger person isn't about absorbing everyone else's damage. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to diminish it for anyone's convenience. Even family. Especially family. Because here's what nobody tells you about being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who always manages. People will take and take and take until you teach them to stop. And teaching them requires being willing to walk away from their approval, their comfort, their version of who you're supposed to be. I'm still walking. Still finding my way back to the girl who thought love meant sacrifice, who thought family meant suffering in silence. I'm building something new from those pieces, something stronger, clearer, more honest. And if Tyler ever tries to use my email address again, at least now he knows I'll burn it all down and walk through the ashes smiling. That's probably the healthiest thing I've learned. Sometimes the smile isn't about happiness. Sometimes it's just about knowing you survived something that was supposed to break you and choosing to keep going anyway. But I'm getting ahead of myself. There's more to this story, parts I haven't told anyone because they're harder to admit. Parts where I wasn't the righteous hero of my own narrative, where the lines got blurry and I had to sit with the uncomfortable truth that hurting someone, even justifiably, still hurts. The week after I paid Tyler's tuition, I had a breakdown in the shower. Not a crying jag, I'd done plenty of those. This was different. I stood under the water until it ran cold, then colder, unable to move, replaying the phone call where Tyler begged me not to ruin his life. Remembering the crack in his voice, the genuine fear. I'd done that. Put that fear there. And part of me, a part I'm not proud of, had enjoyed it. My roommate found me 40 minutes later, still in the shower, water ice cold, skin pruned and pale. She wrapped me in towels, made me tea I didn't drink, and asked the question I'd been avoiding: "Do you actually feel better?" I didn't know how to answer. I felt vindicated. Validated. Proven right. But better? That was murkier. "He deserved it," I said finally. She nodded slowly, cupping her own mug. "Probably. But that's not what I asked." The MCAT prep course I'd been saving for started in January. I'd signed up using the money my dad returned, plus what I'd rebuilt from work. The first class met on a Saturday morning, 3 hours of practice questions and test-taking strategies in an overheated classroom that smelled like old coffee and desperation. I loved it. Sitting there, surrounded by other students who'd sacrificed and saved and clawed their way toward medical school, I felt something click back into place. This was mine. Not a consolation prize, not something I'd gotten because it was convenient for someone else, but something I'd fought for and earned. The Tyler situation had tried to take it from me, but here I was anyway. During the break, a girl named Sarah struck up a conversation. She was retaking the MCAT after scoring lower than she'd hoped, working 2 jobs to afford a second attempt. When I mentioned I'd almost lost my shot at the course, she asked what happened. I gave her the abbreviated version. Brother stole money, parents took my savings, I made him pay it back. "Good for you," she said immediately. My sister pulled something similar sophomore year. Crashed my car, let me take the insurance hit. I didn't do anything about it, and you know what? She did it again junior year. Different car, same story. Some people only learn when it costs them something. Her words sat with me through the rest of class. Maybe that was the real point, not revenge for revenge's sake, but teaching Tyler that actions have weight. That he couldn't float through life cushioned by other people's sacrifices. But late that night, scrolling through social media, I saw Tyler had posted for the first time in weeks. A photo of him at the bookstore, wearing the employee vest, looking tired but real. The caption was simple: "Honest work hits different." 3 months ago, I would have rolled my eyes. Seen it as performative, another play for sympathy. Now I just stared at it, trying to figure out what I felt. Pride? Resentment? Relief? I settled on hope, cautious and small. February brought the kind of cold that makes you question why humans ever settled this far north. I was walking back from the library, hood up, head down against the wind, when my phone buzzed. "Tyler." We'd been texting sporadically since the birthday truce. Weather observations, mostly. Memes sometimes. Nothing substantial, just proof we were both still trying. This message was longer. "Can I ask you something? And can you be honest even if it's harsh?" I stopped walking, fingers already numb. "Sure." The 3 dots appeared and disappeared 4 times before his next message came through. "Do you think I'm lazy?" I could have softened it. Could have said something diplomatic about untapped potential or needing direction. But he'd asked for honesty. "Yes," I typed. "But I think you're getting better." Another long pause. "Mom cried last night. She saw my bank account balance and said she failed me." That she should have made me get a job years ago. Something twisted in my chest. Mom crying over Tyler was nothing new, but this felt different. Not crying because he was in trouble, but because she was recognizing her role in creating his troubles. "What did you say?" I asked. That it wasn't her fault. That I made my own choices. A pause. But also that, yeah, it would have helped if someone had taught me this stuff earlier instead of just giving me money whenever. I read that message 3 times, looking for the angle, the manipulation, the way he'd twist it back to being the victim. I couldn't find it. Just Tyler, stating something uncomfortable and true. "That's really mature of you," I sent back. "Yeah, well. Turns out losing all your stuff and having to budget every meal makes you think about things differently." I smiled at my phone despite the cold. "Welcome to how I've lived since freshman year." "I know. And I'm sorry I never noticed." There it was. Not a grand apology, not a groveling plea for forgiveness. Just 6 words acknowledging what we both known but never said. He'd been so wrapped up in his own world that mine had been invisible. "Thanks," I typed. "That means something." We texted for another 20 minutes while I stood shivering on the sidewalk, working out a tentative plan to meet for lunch over spring break. Neutral territory, a diner halfway between campus and home. Low stakes, easy exit if things went wrong. When I finally made it back to my dorm, my hands were blocks of ice, but something warm had settled in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, that would take longer, maybe years. But the beginning of something that could become forgiveness, given time and continued effort. Spring break lunch happened on a Tuesday. I got there first, claimed a booth by the window, ordered coffee I didn't need. Tyler arrived 10 minutes late, apologetic, explaining about traffic. He looked different. Thinner, maybe, or just less soft around the edges. Working 40 hours a week over break would do that. We made small talk about classes, professors, the weird weather. Dancing around at everything important until the food arrived and we ran out of safe topics. Tyler poked at his burger. "I saw my credit score last month." "Yeah? It's terrible. Like, really bad. Apparently those Fortnite charges hit Dad's credit, and since it was fraud under my account. It's complicated. But basically I tanked his score and mine." I hadn't thought about that ripple effect. Hadn't considered that the consequences would spread beyond the immediate situation. "Can you fix it?" "Eventually. Years of on-time payments, keeping balances low, all that stuff. Dad's working with a credit card company to document it as unauthorized use, but it's a whole process." He finally looked up at me. He's furious. Like, more angry than I've ever seen him. Good, I thought, then immediately felt guilty for thinking it. "What's he making you do?" "Pay him back. The full 3,000, not just what you got. Plus interest." He calculated it all out, made me sign a contract. If I miss a payment, he's taking me to small claims court. I blinked. "Dad would actually sue you?" He said if I'm old enough to commit fraud, I'm old enough to face adult consequences. Tyler's laugh was hollow. "I think you broke something when you canceled that tuition." Like, it made him realize he'd been making excuses for me. That warm feeling from before cooled considerably. I'd wanted Tyler to face consequences, wanted my parents to see their enabling clearly. But breaking the family dynamic entirely? Watching my father threaten legal action against his own son? That felt too far, like I'd pushed a domino without considering what else might fall. "Tyler, I didn't mean..." "No, it's okay." He cut me off, voice firm. It needed a break. We were all pretending everything was fine when it obviously wasn't. You were drowning and we were arguing about whether the water was really that deep. We sat with that for a moment. The diner hummed around us, other families having easier conversations, normal sibling dynamics uncomplicated by theft and revenge. "I got accepted to a summer internship," Tyler said eventually. "Engineering firm downtown. Paid, with potential to return next summer. I find out about the MCAT prep course." "That's huge. Congrats." "Thanks." He smiled, genuine this time. I almost didn't apply. Figured I wasn't qualified, that there were better candidates. But my advisor said I should try anyway, and I don't know. Maybe working at the bookstore taught me I'm capable of more than I thought. Pride bloomed unexpectedly in my chest. Not the bitter, comparative pride of being better than him, but actual happiness for his achievement. You are capable of more. You've just been coasting on easy mode for so long you forgot how to try. Harsh. You asked for honesty. He nodded, accepting it. We finished our meal talking about his internship, my MCAT prep, carefully rebuilding the bridge between us with small, honest moments. When we split the check, his insistence to prove he could budget properly, I hugged him goodbye. Quick, awkward, but real. I'm proud of you, I said into his shoulder. His arms tightened around me. I'm sorry. For all of it. I know I said it over text, but I need you to hear it in person. I'm really sorry, Mia. I know, I said. And I did. March brought unseasonably warm weather and my mother showing up at my campus unannounced. I found her sitting in her car outside my dorm, engine off, staring at the steering wheel like it held answers. I knocked on her window. She startled, then smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Surprise visit? I asked through the glass. She rolled down the window. Can we talk? Maybe take a walk? We ended up at the campus arboretum, following a path that wound between early blooming trees and flower beds still brown from winter. Mom walked with her hands in her pockets, uncharacteristically quiet. Finally, your father and I are in counseling. I stopped walking. What? Couples counseling. We started in January. She paused, picking her words carefully. Everything that happened with you and Tyler. It exposed some cracks we've been ignoring. The therapist says we've been using Tyler's problems as a distraction from our own issues. This was not the conversation I'd expected. What kind of issues? Communication, mostly. Resentment. Your father thinks I coddle Tyler. I think he checks out emotionally rather than dealing with hard things. We both realized we'd trained ourselves to focus on Tyler's drama because it was easier than examining our marriage. The path stretched ahead of us, empty and waiting. I started walking again, processing. And now? Now we're trying to fix it. To be better partners, better parents. To stop using our kids as emotional buffers. She glanced at me sideways. The therapist asked about you. About why we believed Tyler so quickly when you never given us reason to distrust you. What did you say? That you'd always been easy. Independent. That we'd fallen into the trap of thinking you didn't need us the same way Tyler did. Her voice cracked slightly. We were wrong. You needed us to believe in you, and we failed that test spectacularly. I wanted to argue, to maintain my anger, to hold on to the hurt that had fueled me through the hardest parts. But standing there in the early spring warmth, watching my mother's face crumple with genuine remorse, I felt the anger loosen its grip. You did fail, I agreed softly. It hurt really badly. I know. And I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. She stopped walking, turned to face me fully. I can't undo taking your money. I can't undo believing Tyler over you. But I'm trying to understand why I did those things, and how to never do them again. Does Tyler know? About the counseling? Yes. We told him last month. He's processing. I think it scared him, realizing his problems were symptoms of bigger family dysfunction. He said something that stuck with me, that maybe he acted out because it was the only way to get our full attention. That tracked. Tyler, desperate for focus in a family where the squeaky wheel got the oil, learning to squeak louder and louder. Meanwhile, I'd made myself smaller, quieter, easier to overlook. I don't want to be easy anymore, I said. I want to be seen. All of me, not just the parts that don't cause problems. I want to see you, Mom replied. I'm trying to learn how. We walked the rest of the path mostly in silence, comfortable this time. When we reached her car, she hugged me properly, not the quick side squeeze she usually gave but a real embrace that lasted. I love you, Mia, she said into my hair. I'm sorry it took almost losing you to remember how to show it. I drove home that summer for the first time in months. Not for a holiday or obligation, but because I wanted to. Because Tyler had invited me to his internship presentation, and because Mom had asked if I'd help her plant a garden, and because Dad had sent a text saying simply, "We miss you." The house looked the same but felt different. Lighter somehow, like someone had opened windows that had been sealed shut. Tyler's gaming setup was still gone, replaced by a small desk with his engineering textbooks and a desk lamp. The formal living room where we had that terrible family meeting now held a yoga mat and Mom's meditation cushion. Small changes? Intentional ones. Tyler's presentation was at the engineering firm downtown, a sleek glass building that screamed professional success. I sat in the back row with my parents, watching my brother explain his project to a room of executives and other interns. He was confident, knowledgeable, completely unlike the boy who'd blamed me for his mistakes 5 months ago. When he finished, he caught my eye and smiled. I smiled back. Afterward, at dinner, Tyler's choice, his treat from his internship stipend, Dad cleared his throat in that way that meant he had something prepared to say. "I want to apologize to both of you," he started. "I've been thinking a lot about the kind of father I've been versus the kind I want to be. Tyler, I did you no favors by making everything easy. Mia, I did you no favors by taking your strength for granted." Tyler and I exchanged glances. This was new territory for Dad, who typically handled emotions through silence or deflection. "I'm learning that fair doesn't mean equal," Dad continued. "You needed different things from me, and I gave you both the wrong things. I'm sorry for that." "Thanks, Dad," I said, because it was all I could manage around the lump in my throat. Tyler nodded. "Yeah. Thanks." We ate in companionable quiet after that, the kind of silence that felt full rather than empty. When Tyler made a joke about the restaurant's portion sizes, I laughed. When Dad asked about my MCAT prep, I answered honestly about my anxieties. When Mom mentioned the garden needed weeding, we all volunteered. This was what healing looked like, I realized. Not a single moment of forgiveness, not a tearful reunion where everything was instantly fixed. Just a family slowly remembering how to be gentle with each other, how to see each other clearly, how to do the work of staying connected even when it was hard. The story doesn't end here, tied up neatly with a bow. Tyler still frustrates me sometimes with his lack of foresight. My parents still default to old patterns occasionally, catching themselves mid-excuse. I still guard my boundaries fiercely, maybe too fiercely. But we're trying. All of us, genuinely trying. And some nights, when I can't sleep and my mind wanders back to that moment when I hovered over the cancel autopay button, I wonder who I would be if I hadn't clicked it. If I'd swallowed my anger, accepted the loss, stayed small and easy. I think I'd be less certain of my worth, less confident in my voice, less willing to demand the respect I deserve. The cost of that lesson was high, nearly breaking my family, becoming someone capable of calculated payback, carrying the weight of having hurt someone I loved. But the alternative, staying silent, absorbing the damage, teaching everyone that I would always be the one to sacrifice, that cost would have been higher. It would have cost me myself. So no, I don't regret it. Not the planning, not the execution, not the fallout. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that my family had to learn through pain rather than wisdom. I regret the part of my innocence that died when I realized love doesn't automatically mean fairness. But I don't regret standing up. I don't regret fighting back. And I don't regret learning that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable, even when, especially when, it hurts everyone involved. That's the real lesson Tyler and I both learned, just from different angles, that consequences aren't cruelty, that accountability isn't abandonment, and that sometimes the people who love you most need to let you fall so you can learn to catch yourself. I'm catching myself now. We all are. And maybe that's not the ending anyone wanted, but it's the one we needed.